Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 20 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Dish.
Here.
Councilmember Harrison.
Here.
Councilmember Song.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Radina.
Here.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer. Councilmember Ackman.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
Councilmember Cornell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ackman, second by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? All opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have any communications today from our city administrator?
Yes, Mayor, we have some special guests in the audience this evening. I'd like to invite Jennifer Hall up from our Housing Commission, and she will do the introductions.
Good evening, Mayor and Tassan and City Council. I would like to introduce the Community Leadership Council, if they could stand up, please. This is a group that's been working with me on our Dunbar Tower. We just had our recent groundbreaking a couple weeks ago. So if you're out there, you can see that we have geothermal bores going in. And I would like to ask David Malcolm, Shirley Beckley, and Tisha Montague to come up and just say a few words to thank City Council.
Good evening. My name is Tisha Montague, CLC member, and together we are a group of local residents, community leaders, and public servants dedicated to supporting the affordable housing initiatives of the city. We want to thank you for your continued support in our upcoming projects. Also, we are looking to host another amazing event in the heart of downtown Ann Arbor, the African American Festival. I'm just going to briefly touch on it. The AADF promotes diversity. It brings together neighborhood into dialogue, increases creativity, offers opportunities for civic pride, and improves our general psychological well-being. Not only does it support local businesses and entrepreneurs, but it stimulates the local economy as a whole. Thank you to our mayor and city council members who've attended, supported in any way. And as we celebrate our 27th annual event, Ann Arbor celebrates 200 years in a booming and blooming community of opportunities. We pay homage to those who've come before us, and we honor their legacy with a day-long celebration of music, culture, amazing food, and fun for the entire family. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Beckley, and I'd like to thank the mayor. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Dahoney. This is my first time meeting you. I'd like to say hello to you and to all the council members, and to thank you so much for giving us the opportunity of this project for affordable housing, which is needed so much in this town. At one time, I used to work for the Housing Commission. That was back in the 70s. That's been many years ago. But it's good to see that we're expanding and allowing to have some affordable housing. And the extra topping on the cake is that we're going to have some of the projects in what was once our local Black business district and Black community. And thank you again for supporting us and to continue supporting us. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Administrator, council persons. My name is David Malcolm. I'm a longtime resident of Ann Arbor, and I appreciate you affording me the opportunity to speak with you. I appreciate you supporting and funding this project. I think it's very much needed. I promised Jennifer I was going to be good up here, and I'm going to promise you the same. But I just want to say I'm hearing a lot of ramblings about this project and how it's supposed to cause negative things within our neighborhood, and I don't see that at all. I've been in this neighborhood for 52 years of my life, and we used to be a village, we used to be a community, and I want to see that come back. You know, I hear people talking about people that they don't want moving into the neighborhood and things like that. I want to pose a question to those naysayers to this project, you know. What if, and I'm not a what if guy, but what if back in the day, you know, we put a wall up and, you know, the gremlins that came and hit the natives over the head with Plymouth Rock had that wall for them. Will we be the same America? Will we be the same Ann Arbor? No, we wouldn't. We need to make sure that we support projects like this. We support a lot of different things in this city. We need more markers to show people what we've contributed to this community, and I hope that you will continue funding these projects because they are absolutely necessary, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Ms. Hall et al., thank you so much. I was thanking you all. Is that the extent of the administrator's report? Excellent, and thank you very much. We now have the pleasure of our periodic update from the Downtown Development Authority. Ms. Thompson, you have the time.
Thank you, Marcus. Good evening, everybody. I know you all have a very busy meeting tonight, so I'm going to try to keep it somewhat brief. I don't see the, Marcus, I don't see it on the screen, so I wonder. Perhaps I should wait. Okay, it looks like we're good to go.
Excellent.
Thank you for your patience. Try the mouse. Oh, here we go. Perfect. I got it, Marcus. Okay. So I'm here tonight just to give you some brief updates on the parking system and the TIF system. So we'll start with the parking system. In June, we will finally be implementing our rate increases. We've been talking about this for over a year. The DDA board did approve those, the slate of rate increases in April, and we will be implementing in June. We also have an operational change to our parking system coming in June. On June 2nd, which is the first Sunday in June, you will see gate arms down at all of our facilities. Parking patrons will have to pull a ticket to enter and insert a ticket to exit. Parking will remain free. This is best practice in the parking industry. It allows for tighter revenue controls than we have right now and also allows us to track utilization. This is something we've been talking about doing for a number of years, but we were unable to implement this until we had consistent ticketing equipment throughout our system. So we finally have that in place and we're able to do this. We started communicating this fairly broadly beginning about mid-April. You can see on the slide, we have sandwich boards at all of our facilities, notified some of the nearby churches, so we did our best to get this out there. We've also been working with Supportive Connections to get Narcan dispensers in 4 of our parking facilities. I anticipate these being installed maybe this week. I mean, they're coming anytime soon. So the Maynard and Ashley Forest and 4th and William structure will all have these purple dispensers you see. Supportive Connections will be responsible for maintaining the inventory. Our parking operator won't be involved in that. And I also wanted to give an update on rooftop fencing. I know I brought this to your attention previously that we will be replacing all of the rooftop fencing on structures this year. Our engineers recently determined that we'll also be able to add a curved element to some of the fencing in some locations. So similar to what you have, or what I'm showing here on the screen, we haven't gone out to bid yet, so this isn't the actual fencing that we will be using, but it will be something similar to this, and again, we will be installing this in any location where it's feasible. And then finally, on the parking side, we just completed the first phase of an analysis of our on-street accessible parking. There were recently some guidelines issued on the quantity of on-street accessible spaces that we should have. So we did an analysis of all of our blocks. The new guidelines base the count on block perimeters, which was a different way of looking at blocks from how we typically look at block faces. So we completed that analysis, and we know that we need to add about 50 spaces. So the next phase of this process is actually determining the very best spaces for those 50 spots. I think many of you know we have challenges on our downtown streets to have truly accessible spaces between the slope of the street on some blocks and then the various elements we have curbside. So if you think about street lights, street trees, signage, street furniture, sidewalk cafes. In this photo, you see grass. So there are a lot of obstacles on our downtown streets, but we will do our very best to place those spots. And then just quickly on the TIF side, just a few updates. In March, we completed our our first round of public engagement, downtown planning workshops for our circulation study, and we collaborated with the city, and they had information on the comprehensive plan. We felt like, and I think my colleagues at the city felt the same way, these were super successful sessions. We had over 350 people attend the workshops. We had well over 700 comments. We conducted 27 small group stakeholder meetings. And as you can see from the photos, we had a really wide range of ages in participating in these events. We will be doing our second round in September, so stay tuned for more information on that next round. Happy to report that our bike counters, the public-facing web page, is now live and up and running. We have counters on William Street, Division, and Miller Catherine. First Street has equipment that is not operational to date. We anticipate getting that up and running as soon as we can. But the figures you see in front of you or on the slide are from the first of the year, so January 1st until mid-May. And we've seen close to 65,000 people using our bikeway street, so that was good news. DDA staff have been working on creating a public art and placemaking program. We're calling this program Elevate. The goal of the program is to just enhance the downtown experience for all people and really to bring joy, more joy, to our public spaces. Our board will be voting on this program in June, and should it be approved, we will be implementing as soon as we can some various projects. And then finally, I invite you all to the Bicentennial Bike-a-Palooza, which takes place this Saturday from noon to 2 at the old Y Lot, the corner of 5th and William. We will have the Community High Jazz Band there. We'll have lots of activities for the kids. We'll have face painting. It's all free and open to the public. And if you participate in 2 of our education stations, you can get one of these nifty Bike-a-Palooza t-shirts. So hope to see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers in all instances, whether home or online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Ken Garber.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Ken Garber, 2nd Ward. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm with Ann Arbor for Public Power. Thank you for funding a Phase 2 feasibility study in your budget that you will be approving tonight. Last time I was here, I explained why that Phase 2 study needs to arrive at evaluation. It also needs to avoid the errors we saw in Phase 2. The subcontractor, Nugen, badly bungled the FERC stranded cost formula. We documented all this with our expert, Chris Bisdog, in a letter we sent to staff and copied to you back in February. But I'm going to go over it now. So I don't have a screen, so please forgive the whiteboard. Here's the FERC stranded cost formula, okay? SCO is stranded cost obligation. The Nugen errors started with RSE, which is revenue stream estimate. They included the distribution revenue, which is possible, but they failed to include the distribution costs, which go away with the revenue once Ann Arbor leaves the system. Sorry. Here are the errors summarized. And the second one is they didn't subtract transmission revenue, which is really costs that are recovered through the rate base. They didn't consider, FERC has a cap on stranded costs. Nugen never considered that as far as we can tell. And that there's no capacity value included in the CMVE. And finally, the most serious error is that the length of obligation is 20 years according to Nugen. Now, just backing up, stranded costs are the difference between retail and wholesale revenue for the utility once Ann Arbor leaves the system, based on any stranded generation that may exist. Now, right now, FERC requires utilities to mitigate stranded costs. Right now, DTE doesn't have excess generation. It has a severe shortage because it's shutting down coal plants and is trying to meet demand from new electrification. So the idea that we could be on the hook for 20 years of stranded generation costs is pretty absurd. It's conceivable there could be nothing. In aggregate, these errors really inflated the high-end stranded cost estimate and thus the overall valuation in Phase 1. When we submitted this documentation to staff, we got back a letter from Rick Bunch of 5 Links Energy, who defended his study but did not contest or much less refute any of our points. Rather, he said that his stranded cost obligation was a worst case outcome, unlikely but possible. Well, it's possible that the earth could fall off its axis tomorrow and we could all die, but it's not a reasonable possibility. And so I think, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jean Ross.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Ross, and I'm here to ask the council to continue to support the Rising Hope for Housing program. I live on Fries Avenue in Ann Arbor and have been a resident for a total of 30 years, originally moving here in 1980. I eventually moved to Florida and returned in 2020. I became engaged with A Brighter Way, originally as a board member, and I transitioned through several roles until my current position as development director. Several other people have already explained what we do at A Brighter Way, so I won't go back into the details. I would add that during the past few years, we've expanded our mission and scope to include offering assistance to anyone who is justice impacted living in Washtenaw County. We widened our mission because we recognize that being social justice impacted continues throughout your entire life, and not just for the first few months after you return home. Living in a diverse community is vitally important to me. I worry that Ann Arbor is becoming an unreachable city for most people, and I hear people talk about this wherever I go. I mean, we all know the cost of houses that are selling currently in our neighborhoods. Ann Arbor is a beautiful small city that has so much to offer, and finding a way to welcome everyone is what makes it truly a special place. And I would really like to see us maintain that. I want to thank the council for funding the program last year. The results of it are significant. We're changing the trajectory of people's lives, not just the people we see in our offices, but their families as well. And as a result, our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy Griswold.
Good evening. My comments are really just addressed to the public and anyone listening, because I've talked to the mayor and this council many, many times, and nothing. So, a general comment. Fund equity. Fund equity is like a rainy day fund. It is not raining. Let's leave it there. What's really disturbing is that we are not addressing our basic safety infrastructure for our children in this budget. We're spending some of our fund equity and we are ignoring the very basic needs of our children. I'll give you a couple examples. King School crosswalks. Vegetation just keeps growing and people tell me, Kathy, you just need to go out there and cut it. That doesn't solve the problem. In Detroit, they have a 2-week program right now to address vegetation proactively, and they're basically giving warnings and educating the public. In Ann Arbor, we can't do that. The other one is the rectangular rapid flashing beacons that have been requested by the community for Stone School Road. The community's asked for those over and over again, but we can't fund those. Now, Vision Zero is a data-driven program, but we are not collecting data, or if we are, we're keeping it a secret. Our 2023 crash data, pedestrian crash data, is not yet publicly available. The state's Vision Zero program states that we should do an analysis after a crash and determine if there's any contributing factors that can be improved immediately. We haven't done that back to 2020, as far as I know. So, and lastly, when our last transportation manager was hired, I had requested that we get a civil engineer with an urban planning master's degree. We did not do that. Raymond is an excellent planner. However, we do not have operational expertise in the transportation area at a high enough level in this organization to make meaningful improvements. I believe that the city of Ann Arbor is liable when crashes occur at an intersection where we have already identified the deficiencies. So if for no other reason than to protect the city of Ann Arbor, please take the appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeff Hayner.
Hello, I'm going to get to DC6 real quick. A couple of things coming up. I don't know if folks are aware of this in Ann Arbor. I mean, many of us are, but this weekend is a movement weekend in Detroit. It's a 24th annual weekend. It's one of the largest electronic music festivals in the world, and it's pretty fantastic. It's really good for the city. A lot of people from Washtenaw County participate in Ann Arbor. I'm playing on Sunday at Old Miami, and then after party Sunday, and then Monday, and then after party Thursday at Elks on the 30th. And then tomorrow, there's supposedly a meeting from the group Art Space that's culminating what has apparently been a mostly hidden 2-year process to announce a location here in Ann Arbor where they're going to try and compete with the Ann Arbor Housing Commission for low-income housing tax credits to give low-income housing to artists. And Lord knows we need more low-income housing here, so I'm not opposed to that idea in any way on its face. I'm sorry to hear that. I caught the end of something that's been going on for 2 years now, mostly out of the public eye. Okay, DC6. Hundreds of rule changes that have happened in the last couple years under this body have mostly been designed to shrink or eliminate public input, give a simple majority new powers to limit council discussions, reduce public notice, reduce council's accountability to residents, and shorten meetings as much as possible because apparently you're all very busy. And there's a couple things in this batch of rules changes that are super offensive. Number one, if 30 people show up, you're going to reduce their time to 2 minutes each instead of 3 minutes. So however you want to couch that in your speeches, that's basically saying the more important something is to this community, the less you want to hear from each person about it. And you're going to reduce it by a third. And I got to be honest, like we were chatting today about this, and public speaking time is important to the public. And go ahead and do this and treat us like 3/5 of a person. Because that's what you're doing. You're taking away a third of what we have to say. The more important it is, the less you want to hear it. I'm sure that's fine. And the Democratic Party is reclaiming their opposition to free speech and public representation with a vigor unseen since the 1860s, I have to say, when they crushed the Republican free press down in the South. Another thing that's offensive is that now you're going to allow yourself to look at phones or electronic devices during meetings. And so now you can chat on Twitter with your rabid followers like Julie Grand used to do, or you can shop for furniture like Jen Iyer used to do. I have photos if the press wants to see them. 2.5 years later, I still get knocks on my door from residents begging for help. That's why I wanted to have an ombudsperson. I just got a letter this week from somebody. Your first act was to quietly hide your home addresses from the public. So they still think I'm on city council. You created a situation that now you're going to pretend to solve by giving yourselves $100,000 mailing out shiny flyers touting how awesome you guys are. And the Dems in the State House abuse their franking privileges, and this is even worse. It's disgusting. Budgets reflect values, and yours are the values of sociopaths, narcissistic sociopaths.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Higgins.
Hi, I'm Sean Higgins, the Secretary of Ann Arbor for Public Power. I'd like to express gratitude on my behalf and on behalf of our organization to City Council for setting aside part of the budget to fund a second phase feasibility study into municipalization. This type of study is essential to inform the public what to expect from municipalization and to provide a basis on which the city can argue the valuation of DTE's assets and franchise in the case of pursuing municipalization. We feel strongly that the study must include valuations of stranded costs and going concern in order to deliver the public more precise information on cost than the wide range that came from the first study. There is precedence for this in Pueblo, Colorado's Phase 2 study. We also feel strongly, given the deep investment in this project from ourselves and others in the community, the RFP drafting process must have public input. Our organization intends to continue our advocacy and watch the RFP and study processes closely, as this is a great step forward, and we want to be certain that it's done right. Again, thank you for your work, as well as your time and communication with us to bring reliable, renewable, and responsible energy to this city.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hughes.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I was looking at the proposed budget amendments, and I was really hoping to see something about unarmed response in there, and I was disappointed that I did not see it. We've, a couple meetings ago, you guys passed it, or several meetings ago, you guys passed a thing saying, hey, City Council is still committed to providing an unarmed response program, but the actions, I haven't been seeing that backed up by action. The city has decided to turn down the $3.5 million of ARPA funding that would have funded the program for a while. And there's now nothing in the budget that I'm seeing that would fund an unarmed response program. And I really hope that if you guys don't pass an amendment to fund unarmed response this time, that you will, that you're intending to pass a budget amendment later on. And I know that you guys put out 2 different RFPs and then nitpicked the responses until they were found unacceptable. And that's not something that people do if they're serious and committed to creating a program. That's something that that NIMBYs do if they want to not have if they want to stop a housing from happening. They'll find some reason to knock it out, and it seemed like that's the kind of thing that was happening with the RFP, is that reasons were found to make these RFPs not happen, and I hope that we can instead get something that will happen, be committed to it, because an unarmed response program is going to be very important. I'm a member of the trans community, and there's a lot of us who have mental health issues, and we can't just call the police and say, hey, my friend is suicidal, can you do a wellness check, because my community doesn't trust the police to
30
handle us
seconds.
fairly and equitably. And there's a lot of other minority communities in town who are similarly afraid to call the police, and with good reasons. There needs to be someone that's able to provide services safely and in a trustworthy manner. So we need an armed response. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Stolberg.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg. I'd like to talk about the budget, specifically the Fifth Amendment, which asks for $100,000 so that you council members can communicate with us, your constituents. You say that it's for equitable communications because some people don't have as much access to technology, computers, to do email. Somebody could call the city and say, trying to figure out how to write to my council member or how to reach them. And the person that they'd reach on the phone at City Hall could look on the website where you have your email addresses, but also your phone numbers listed. You might want to list your mailing addresses as well. I suppose if they wrote to the city, it might go in your mailbox at City Hall, but it might not be checking your mailboxes. There's a lot of ways you can communicate with your constituents without spending $100,000 tax money. And I want to know how well this has been thought through and whether you've vetted this through the city attorney's office. It's one thing when you spend your personal time and money putting out newsletters and communications, or especially in the campaign, when you spend your campaign funds or PAC money or whatever to communicate to us. But now you're spending our money to communicate to us. What if you say something that's inaccurate? What if it's, not purposefully inaccurate, but inaccurate? This is taxpayer money. Who vets the communications that are going out from individual council members? Right now, I'm guessing that reports from different departments are carefully reviewed prior to them being sent out to the public. Your individual council members' communications that we're going to use this $100,000 for, who's reviewing them? What's the process? I don't see that in this budget amendment. So perhaps you want to talk about that. Maybe you want to talk to your city attorney about that. What about privileged information? Citizens have asked for information and been told it's privileged. What if you accidentally communicate privileged information? And then you get into the whole, I won't even go to FOIA right now. But the bottom line is, it's different than a campaign, where your campaign communications, even if there's inaccuracies, they're challenged in the process of a campaign. They're viewed through the lens of a political campaign. This is
30
communication from the city with city money. The other thing I don't like is couching it as equitable communication. That's progressive. I'm a longtime progressive. Don't hide behind things that you're going to say are equitable when this is just marketing for yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeff Crockett.
Well, I'm here to share some very exciting news. My name is Jeff Crockett, and I'm the head of the History Subcommittee, which is coordinated with Destination Ann Arbor, the Library Green Conservancy, the State Street District, and the Kemp House to plan Ann Arbor's 200th birthday celebration and picnic on Liberty Plaza this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Longtime Ann Arbor resident and radio personality Lucianne Lance is the MC. We are also pleased that Congresswoman Debbie Dingell will read a congressional record statement honoring Ann Arbor's bicentennial. And in addition, 7 speakers representing the diversity of Ann Arbor will share what Ann Arbor's bicentennial means to them. They include Bev Willis Amy Situ, John Metzger, Christine Morales Hemingway, Artemis Leontis, Ali Ramlawi, and Charles Newman. Norm Tyler, who along with Tom Stilberg created the amazing A2 Smart Tours, will provide an overview of the online tours and what has become a lasting gift to Ann Arbor. This event will also feature Ann Arbor's Vocal Arts Ensemble, led by Ben Cohen, and the Ralph McKee's Blues Band. Christine Crockett, president of the Ann Arbor Historical Foundation, will provide a preview of the 200-question bicentennial multiple choice quiz developed by 29 volunteers representing diverse communities. This bicentennial quiz will be rolled out 10 questions per week on the bicentennial website, thanks to Amy Carbo of Destination Ann Arbor, and through social media channels. At noon, we will sing Happy Birthday to Ann Arbor and enjoy a cake provided by Big City Bakery. And finally, we are pleased to announce that local movie producer Christina Morales Hemingway will be having a script reading of her new movie, Universal Chord, at the Ann Arbor District Library from 3 to 5 p.m. on Saturday. It's about 1969 Ann Arbor. Great. The promotion for this event has included radio interviews by Deb Pollock on WEMU and Lucianne Lance at 1290 AM on WLB Radio, LBY Radio, an MLive article by Ryan Stanton, a Channel 4 news segment, and social media. But it would be helpful for us to know how many city council members will attend this event. I plan to recognize those in attendance by having you stand during my acknowledgement section at the beginning of the event at 11 a.m. On behalf of all the volunteers who have made this event possible, we hope that you will promote this event in your correspondence to constituents and in social media. We believe that this celebration provides us the opportunity to set aside differences and unite to celebrate the diversity that has made Ann Arbor a great place to live. Bring a picnic lunch or buy a takeout lunch from one of the nearby restaurants. We hope to see you there. And by the way, this came from Elmo's T-shirts. You too can have one by going down. It's a great hat. And get one of these from Norm Tyler, about A2 Smart Tours. Please take a look. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Haber.
It's me now.
Yes.
Hello, Council. I'm Alan Haber. And in parallel with the Ann Arbor birthday party on the Liberty Plaza, there's an Ann Arbor birthday party on the Community Commons Library Lane lot. And again, you are all invited. This will begin with Native American recognition of where we actually are on this land and in our history. And we continue, besides having a really free market, not flea, but free, where people bring things of their surplus to give away and share with one another. And we'll have a delicious food truck there, of course, and about 5 bands throughout the course of the day. The Conscious Cafe, which began 2 years ago in the co-housing world, will begin as a conversation that actually invites you to think more deeply about what's going on in the world, the old knowledge and the new knowledge that is coming into play. And we'll have Conscious Cafe is getting itself established and is itself a present to Ann Arbor, as the Commons also is a present. We'll have a discussion on permaculture, another present to Ann Arbor, and on the local economy toward a cooperative economy and sharing what we have and our resources. So this is a time to see how we can talk and visit and become community together. The Peace Table, which has traveled the world and will be on the Commons to help us bring our highest values to the question of how do we make peace, not through our divisions, but looking at our commonalities. So you're all invited, and all you in the city who are watching and those people here. This 200th birthday of Ann Arbor is our opening to our 3rd century, where we look to improve what has been and have new directions of cooperation and community. So you're all invited, and looking forward to a very happy Ann Arbor 200th birthday and the beginning of a very prosperous third century. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christine Crockett.
It's a pleasure to share some very happy news with you this evening. In 1983, during the administration of Mayor Lou Belcher, the Old Fourth Ward Historic District was created, celebrating the oldest residential neighborhood of Ann Arbor. In the following year, in 1984, we established the Old Fourth Ward Historic District Neighborhood Association. And since that time, for the past 40 years, many members of the association have participated in many aspects of community life in Ann Arbor. This was recognized at the most recent conference of the Michigan Historic Preservation Network, which was in Kalamazoo. On May 10th, we were awarded the Community Award. And this poster was at the conference to show some of the many activities we have been involved with over the years. The historical street exhibits, the Downtown Neighbors Party, which, by the way, was my idea, distributing student swag under Beyond the Diag, that program at the University of Michigan. Lots of open meetings where we had candidates nights for many years, and everybody was welcome and they were well attended. I'd like to thank the people who helped support us in this endeavor. Our first ward councilperson, Lisa Dish, wrote an enthusiastic letter of support, as well as Ann Bannister also wrote a letter, our former councilperson, State Senator Jeff Irwin, State Representative Jason Morgan, Jill Thatcher in the Planning Department, and also the Historic District Coordinator, and Christine Brummer, the President of the Old West Side Association. Our application was fine-tuned by Eileen Tyler, who is here tonight, and she is a lifetime winner from the Michigan Historic Preservation Network, as is her husband, Norm Tyler, and they're both residents of the Old Fourth Ward Historic District. The Preservation Network has been instrumental in attaining tax credits available for the restoration and reparation of the historic built environment throughout Michigan. And this year they are working on upping the level of that funding to $100 million. We've been able to take advantage of it, as have other people in Ann Arbor, to maintain our beautiful built environment. So we just want to share this happy news. We're very proud of this, and we intend to continue our work in the community.
Thank you. Are there communications today from council? Councilmember Adina.
I will note that in addition to some of the other celebrations that are happening this weekend for the actual 200th anniversary of our city, AFC Ann Arbor, which has the local semi-pro soccer team, which has partnered with the city this year for the bicentennial. They are donating 3 trees for every goal they score this season. They will be doing a celebration this Saturday as well at their home game and unveiling some bicentennial swag. So I encourage folks to stop by and support our local soccer team.
Further discussion? Or probably further communication? Councilmember Watson.
For those Ward 2 residents that have been closely following the Nixon Road project, you'll note that I mentioned a info session in May during the last meeting. Talking to city staff, there's going to be a little bit of a delay in that meeting. We're looking to June or July, so I will keep residents updated on that. I'd like to thank the members of the Community Leadership Council who are present in chambers tonight. we're all, for many of us who attended, we were all still basking in the glow of the groundbreaking ceremony last month and looking forward to the opening of Dunbar Tower. The dedication of the members of the CLC is proof positive of our community's collective investment in Dunbar Tower's success.
Further communication, Councilmember Song.
I'd like to echo my thanks. I'm preparing to speak at the invitation of MSHDA, the State Housing Authority, on our work here in Ann Arbor in addressing the housing crisis, along with Detroit Mayor Duggan, the head of MSHDA, and a local developer in Detroit. And when I asked our housing commissioner, Jennifer Hall, for some talking points, what she would take pride in the work here in Ann Arbor, she pointed to the continued and constant engagement with the Leadership Council on I think it was twice monthly basis. I'm really proud of that work. And I'm really glad that this is ongoing. So it goes past the groundbreaking. And in her email, she also said that it's about repairing trust and continuing that trust building. So I'm excited to be able to go to Mackinac and say that this is the work that Ann Arbor has invested in and continues to invest in, and that's in partnership and recognition of history. I also want to thank folks for bringing that poster. It reminds me of the work that I saw on Martha's Vineyard and Oak Bluffs and seeing the historical homes there, and historically black community in Martha's Vineyard and the importance of place and community and beauty. So thank you for sharing that.
Further communication, Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. On the theme of affordability, I wanted to let people know about an event tomorrow at Studio. It's an art space meet and greet. For those who are not familiar with Art Space, they're a very well-respected group out of Minneapolis that helps with affordable and workforce housing for creatives. There was an article, I think, about a week ago on MLive about Ann Arbor's funky past and where it is in the present, and I think that anybody that's been here for any period of time knows that we've lost a lot of creative people to surrounding communities because it's so expensive to live here. And so Art Space is here engaging in an arts market study where they try to understand the needs of that community. In fact, Art Space is already working on the Dunbar Towers project, so they already have some engagement with the city there. Anyway, the event is tomorrow, 5:30. Come out. There's going to be musical performances, discussion, Q&A, and hope to see you there.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you. Last week during National Police Week, I visited Atlanta, Georgia to learn about their policing alternatives and diversion initiatives, otherwise known as PAD. PAD responds to non-emergency quality of life concerns related to mental health, substance use, or extreme poverty. Police officers with probable cause to arrest can refer people to PAD instead, avoiding arrests. If the individual and PAD agree, the officer leaves without creating a police report. I was able to see this in practice, and I learned a lot from interacting with the dedicated team of community members, mental health professionals, and police officers. This collaboration reduces unnecessary arrests and connects individuals with vital supports and resources. Speaking of National Police Week, I know that I'm often recognized as the Police Reform Council member, and I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank our police department, led by Chief Andre Anderson, for their dedicated service and commitment to our community. I appreciate your hard work and willingness to adapt to the changes that Council has implemented, namely the Driving Equality Ordinance. So thank you.
Further communication from Council. I would like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to Council for consideration at the May 6 regular session, May 6, 2024 regular session. To the Elizabeth Dean Fund Committee, David Penland. To the Parks Advisory Commission, Lawrence O'Connell. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, Julie Weatherby. Further, I have two. Is there any difference between these two? Excellent, thank you. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Iyer, second by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to council for consideration at the May 6, 2024 regular session. To the Airport Advisory Committee, Rosemary Nellie Faulkner. To the Ann Arbor Public Art Commission, Marietta Porter. To the Building Board of Appeals, Paul Darling and Kevin Cox. To the Cable Communications Commission, David Pittman. To the City Planning Commission, Sarah Mills. To the Commission on Disability Issues, Rachel Hawkins, Rosanita Ratcliffe, Zachary Damon. To the Design Review Board, William Kinley, Lori Singleton. To the Downtown Area Advisory Council, Stephen Palms. To the Downtown Development Authority, Stephen Brummer. To the Economic Development Corporation, Henry McQueen. To the Elizabeth Dean Fund Committee, Richard Wieland. To the Energy Commission, Noah Levin, John Mursky. To the Historic District Commission, Jennifer Ross. To the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, Karen Wanza. To the Housing Board of Appeals, Lisa Stetler, Angela Rasmussen. To the Human Rights Commission, Leslie Stambaugh. To the Huron River Watershed Council, Janice Bobrin. To the Local Development Finance Authority, Michael Parastakis. To the Parks Advisory Commission, Rachel Skylas. To the Public Market Advisory Commission, James Bouge. To the Recreation Advisory Commission, Mark Brehab. To the Renters Commission, Jordan Else, Jeffrey Lowe's, Robert Droppelman. To the Transportation Commission, Peter Hoke. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, Candace Briere, Michael Daniel, Christopher Magnan, and Christiana Lukish. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to call quick attention to CA 11, which will adopt an Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan for Ann Arbor parks. This is the culmination of a couple of years of work, including an assessment of city-owned recreation facilities, community centers, community-wide parks, natural areas, neighborhood parks, as well as recreational programming and services. And by adopting this plan today, we will set into motion a series of immediate and long-term actions to make our parks and recreation facilities, programming, and spaces more accessible. Unfortunately, this work is not free, and so it does include a commitment to funding over the next 30 years. And given the already limited fiscal resources within parks, staff are already working on a financing strategy for the plan that will likely include federal and state resources, philanthropic dollars, public-private partnerships, and other ideas. Both the Parks Advisory Commission and Commission on Disability Issues support adoption of this plan. And I just also wanted to briefly thank our committed park staff for the work that went into developing this with our consultants and for the future work they will do alongside our city's new accessibility coordinator to implement this plan in the years to come. Thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We now come to public hearings. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public hearing. In order to speak at a public hearing, one need not have signed up in advance, but your speech must relate to the specific subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. Speakers in all instances, both here and online, will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk or the time clock will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning, rezoning of 0.65 acres from TWP Township District to R1D, Single Family Dwelling District, 3701-3713 Riverside Drive. Is there anyone in-house who would like to speak at this public hearing? Is there anyone online who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I see no one with their hand raised.
Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of May 6, 2024. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Watson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. B1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55 zoning, rezoning of .65 acres from TWP Township District to R1D Single Family Dwelling District, 3701 through 3713 Riverside Drive. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of B1. Councilmember Dish.
I'll be brief. City staff recommended R1B for this rezoning, and what we are doing here is rezoning parcels that have been recently annexed to the city. R1B requires a 10,000 square foot lot minimum, and so if we rezone to that, the max that could be achieved would be 3 houses on this 0.74 acres. The land use plan calls for single and two-family residential uses for this site, so it would not be inconsistent with a rezoning to R1D, which is what the Planning Commission recommends and what is before you to vote on. R1D carries a 5,000 square foot lot minimum and very slightly smaller front setbacks. This rezoning, as we have before us, what Planning Commission presented, R1D, is consistent with Goal C of the land use element, which is to provide a full range of housing choices, size, price, design, accessibility, etc., that meets the existing and anticipated needs of all city residents. So I will be voting yes for this, as I did on Planning Commission, and I hope my colleagues will join me in accepting this recommendation.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. C1, an ordinance to amend, your fondest hopes realized. C1, an ordinance to amend section 460 and 461 of chapter 49, sidewalks of title 4, streets and sidewalks of the code of the city of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Cornell.
Thank you. I want to thank the residents who reached out after our snow events this winter and pointed out areas of opportunity to improve our accessibility within the city and to do a better job collectively as a community with our snow removal. So what this ordinance change involves are a couple of things. One of the things I think that was surprising to me was to find out that citizens, private homeowners, paid the same amount of fees as commercial entities or apartment buildings when snow removal was not done according to our current ordinance. So this change modifies that, and commercial and multifamily dwellings would have more additional fines than what homeowners, individual property owners would have. So hopefully, I know we heard a lot about half blocks long of property downtown that snow was not removed from, and that was obviously a really significant barrier for those who walk or bike or have mobility issues. So that closes that preferential treatment, so to speak. And the other big change in this is that it adds an email option to deliver a citation. So currently, a citation is delivered by mail. The person who owns the property might not be local. It takes several days for it to get there, and by that point, the snow is hopefully either melted or gone anyway. So this allows for expanded notification options either by phone or by email, as well as snail mail, to who is the owner's agent listed on the property. So these two things for us, in talking with community standards and with the legal office, really help to make our snow removal compelling and also motivating for people to actually do it, but I think levels the playing field in some ways where there are some pretty significant disparities.
Councilmember Medina.
Thank you. I just actually have a quick question with regard to the the fine ranges in the ordinance, and so I appreciate the change to differentiate between kind of the bigger complexes and single residents, but I wonder if the city attorney could explain how citations are generally issued when there's a range of possible fines for an offense. So like the $60 to $100 or $250 to $500. And I'm particularly concerned here about how to ensure that we don't have bias or inequity in our citation process.
Thank you,
Councilmember.
Go ahead, John.
My apologies.
Mr. Reiser's on the phone.
Mr. Reiser, all good. You're on.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I don't want to jump on my boss, but currently it's just the ticket, obviously, and it's a ticket based on whether it's a first offense or whether it's a second offense. Under the proposed ordinance, it would be a ticket for one kind of zoning district, which would be R1, 2, or 3, which are single family, duplex, or townhouse, or something other than that, either commercial or R4, which is like apartment buildings, apartment complexes. So the bias would be if you've got more property, if you're in a commercial district, you're going to get a bigger ticket. So that's done based on those are in commercial districts, and there's more sidewalk to plow, they get more use, and so that's what differentiates the two currently. Of course, council could.
Actually, sorry. I think you may have misunderstood, or I may not have phrased correctly. Within those individual, so for example, for an R1, R2, and R3, even within that, for the first offense, there's a range of a fine of $60 up to $100. Second offense is $100 up to $250, and third is $200 to $400. And so I guess I'm wondering within those offenses how we're ensuring that one person isn't getting a $60 offense, or certain neighborhoods are getting a $60 offense while others are getting a $100 offense.
And currently, the only way to know that would be to ask the court administrator to see what the fines have been. If a ticket is issued and it's not set for a formal hearing, then it'll go before the magistrate, and then someone can plead responsibility or accept responsibility, either outright or with an explanation, and then the magistrate listens to the plight, the story, and then imposes a fee accordingly. Even though it's $60, some of those have been as low as $10, and the drafters of this motion wanted there to be some minimum accountability, even in residential districts, for not shoveling snow. So they set a minimum of $60. It will be up to the magistrate if it's an informal hearing, and if it's set for a formal hearing, that would go in front of a judge. When I adjudicate infractions in the 15th District Court, it's often if someone accepts responsibility, we have them plead to the lowest, just because the cooperating and we're trying to enforce through education, and there's no reason to ask for a higher fine structure than you really need to. That's what the second offense provisions are for, with a mandatory minimum of in a residential $100. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's up to the discretion of the judge or magistrate who imposes the sentence for informal hearing.
Thank you. Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm one of the co-sponsors on this ordinance change, and I think that it's necessary for various accessibility reasons. This was something that was reviewed by members of CODI because there are currently obviously a lot of accessibility issues with inadequate snow shoveling. I also want to make sure that in the enforcement of this, that we are thinking about unintended consequences. And we need to make sure that people who are unable to shovel due to disability, or maybe there's economic or social hardship, that they get connected with the resources that they need. So, in one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is also help the city explore how to increase capacity for Snowmatch so that it can become more robust. But in addition, in this ordinance, I would like to make an amendment that would ensure that individuals would be connected to resources if they need them. Should I just go ahead and read it?
Forward it to clerk.
Okay, I believe that's already been forwarded to the clerk.
Can you send that back around, please?
Is that my notice?
It sounds like it got through.
Okay.
Yes,
So
please.
the amendment would be adding a paragraph under section 461.1. It would be a separate paragraph inserted, which would make it section or paragraph 2. And the additional text would read, "The notice shall contain information directing residents with disability or other access needs to contact community standards for potential assistance, including from programs that pair residents with volunteers to assist them with snow removal."
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Adina. Councilmember Gaziadwan, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I think that, any point of contact that we have with residents, whether it's a warning, that's another thing that should be pointed out about this. It's not just giving out fines. There is a warning that goes out. And in that warning, it will be explicit that if you have an access issue, if there's social economic hardship, you can call this number and we will help. So I hope my colleagues will support this tonight as well.
Is that amendment friendly to the body? The amendment is friendly. For Councilmember Gaziadwan, you still have the floor.
Oh.
Should you wish?
Well, I also want to thank, Council members Cornell and Briggs and Ackman for all your hard work on this. I do have a question for Attorney Reiser. Would it be possible to utilize funds from the fines that are generated from this to potentially fund some of the assistive services that we provide, like Snow Match, or potentially expanding Snow Match? I guess that would be a question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if that's for me or Ms.
Or maybe
Carr.
it would be Mr. Mahoney. Is that wrong? Right?
It should be the Attorney
Mr.
Reiser.
Reiser, if you know how to answer that question and what the court does with the funds, go ahead.
I'm willing to step up and answer, but I don't want to step on toes either. The fines in court costs for municipal civil infractions go back to the political subdivision whose ordinance was violated. And I called the court administrator, and she sends them to the city. Of course, it's a policy question for this board and for the administrator as to how to dole out those funds. We can keep track of how many violations of this would be a violation of section 4:60, which is removal of snow and ice from sidewalks, walks, and ramps. So we know how many that there were. There were 77 of them, for instance, for this year. To find out how much revenue it created, you'd have to look at each case individually, because if there's a ticket issue, if it were up to $60, some of them are 10, some of them might be 20, 30, 40, 60 or whatever. So you'd have to kind of track how much revenue was produced. Also, if someone got a ticket, but they didn't show up for court, then a default judgment would be entered and there wouldn't be any revenue collected from that default judgment. So it would be, the answer is yes to your question, but tracking how much it is will be a trickier problem that would involve, court administration kind of following up on the violations for 460.
Okay, thank you. Is there a way we can get those numbers from
Councilmember?
Oh, am I done with my time?
You are done with your time.
Okay, all right. Next time. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Ackman.
Thank you. So as Councilmember Cornell said in her comments, our intent was to scale the fees to the type of property. And I heard from a resident who pointed out that the way that the ordinance is written in our version, there is housing of the type that we intend to find less in some of these zoning categories. So for example, this person lives in a detached home in a zoned office. So our intent was not to treat that as office. And so I'd like to introduce an amendment that I think was already sent around, that the fines for a single-family dwelling, two-family dwelling, or townhouse dwelling unit located on a non-residential zoned parcel shall be treated the same as R1 residential property.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Is that friendly to the body?
Thank you.
It's friendly. Councilmember Ackman, you still have the floor.
I don't have anything to add except thanks for the resident that reached out to point out this unintended consequence. Thanks.
Further discussion? All in favor? Councilmember Adina.
I was just going to say, I'm going to support moving this to second reading tonight, but I think I'd like to have maybe some further conversations between now and then to just better understand what other ordinances we have that allow kind of discretion in the fine schedule. I am just a little concerned about how that might impact residents if there's discussion, if there's discretion being granted, and how it could be applied inequitably if it's outside of our hands. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Agman, sure.
I'm going to take a stab and ask Attorney Reiser a question. I think it's the case that these fines are always discretionary, and what council is doing is setting a bottom and an upper limit.
That's absolutely correct. If it's a fine of up to $200, it could be, or up to $500, it could be $100, it could be $60, it could be anywhere in between. And that's sometimes a function of what's resolved during the course of a docket, during the course of a plea, based on cooperation, not knowing the equities, et cetera. And I appreciate Councilmember Radina's concern that it be fair and looked at from, equity lens. Is it fair? Why do some get a break, others not get a break? So the way to avoid that is to put potentially mandatory minimum fees, which make it somewhat fair, and then have a maximum. So at least someone gets the amount. And Councilmember Radina, you and I can talk offline, or you can send me an email. I can follow up on fines and costs generally on the 15th district docket, and maybe bring in Assistant City Attorney Jen Janeski as well for the response.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC1, resolution to reappoint Sheila Schuler to the Greenbelt Advisory Commission, moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of DC1. All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DC2, resolution to reappoint Macy Wheeling, Anya Dale, Christopher Graham to the Environmental Commission, moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. 11 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DC3, resolution to appoint Janet Haynes, Roderick Green, Mohammed Othman, and Nathaniel Growlish to the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, moved by Councilmember Harrison, seconded by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of DC3. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 7-vote requirement. Resolution to appoint Michelle Lau to the Renters Commission as a non-registered elector, moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion, please, of DC4. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 7-vote requirement. DC5, resolution to reappoint non-registered electors to Ann Arbor boards and commissions, moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of DC5. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved with 11 council members present, all voting the affirmative, thus satisfying the 7-vote requirement. DC6, resolution to approve amendments to the council rules, moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Discussion, please, of DC6. All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. DS1, resolution authorizing issuance of 2024 capital improvement bonds for the 121 Catherine Street Affordable Housing Development not to exceed $9 million. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion, please, of DS1. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really happy to see this. With this resolution, the city steps up as one of the financial stakeholders in this important project. Bonding the affordable housing millage money makes it possible for Ann Arbor Housing Commission to pursue several projects concurrently at different stages in the process. And the processes of assembling funding and developing site plan and various approvals take so long that it is crucial to be able to have several irons in the fire at once. So I am happy to do this.
Further discussion, Councilmember Song.
I am beyond thrilled. I think a constant refrain has been, let's talk about CDFIs, let's talk about bonding, let's talk about housing and financing, and how difficult it is to get, was it 12 pots of funding for the East Catherine project? And now we're one of those pots. So it shows, I think, confidence in our own work and leadership in in the Housing Commission and true partnership. So thanks to the City Administrator's Office and to our CFO for this extra work. Because it is work, it's not just trust and confidence, it's actually staff time. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Further discussion? For my part, I'm very excited too about this moving forward. You know, what we are able to do here is we're able to leverage the great and good work done by staff, by community members, by council, past and present, in moving forward on our affordable housing initiatives. And further, what we are doing is we are augmenting and leveraging the commitment made by Ann Arbor's voters in 2020 to support the affordable housing millage. By that millage, of course, we have levied a property tax of $1 million on ourselves over the course of the next 16 years in order to support affordable housing ever since 2020. What we're doing here with this bond and the bond on the next is that we are accelerating that funding, the utilization of that funding through the market in order to provide housing today for Ann Arbor residents, for future perhaps present Ann Arbor residents, but certainly future Ann Arbor residents who will be here will be in need and will be here shortly. It is, I think, a exciting use of our affordable housing millage. It is a strategy with great promise, and I look forward to it being effected in other contexts as well. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. DS2, resolution to approve the creation of the Affordable Housing Capital. Councilman Briggs.
Apologies, but I think there were a few members down here that wanted to speak to DC6. To DC6, if we might be able to scroll back a bit on the agenda.
Did we? All right. Have I opened DC2? No. So I guess formally you're moving to reconsider. Motion to reconsider by Councilmember Briggs with respect to DC6. Seconded by, is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It is up for reconsideration. Procedurally, I'm not quite, so do I need to remove it?
Yeah.
Motion to DC6, resolution to approve amendments to the council rules, moved by Councilmember Iyer, seconded by Councilmember Briggs. Discussion of DC6. I assume Councilmember Briggs. Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. So I just thought it was important to kind of address what some of these rules are, council rules that are changing. They were brought up, it's a compilation of a lot of different amendments that are being proposed tonight, some that have been drawn from staff, some from legal staff, some from council members, from the public, and there's a number of ones that are just improve clarity and bring them up to kind of up to date in terms of how communications happen. But a few of the notable changes that I wanted to just draw attention to. For us, for council members, there's a change that we would not add an item to the agenda after 5 p.m. on Thursday, except for in the situation where we might vote to amend the agenda here at the table. There is a change that public commenter to the public commenter zone that we would essentially identify an area around the speaking podium that others couldn't encroach upon when you're there to speak, because it's your time, unless you've invited somebody in there to speak with you. There's a change that signage wouldn't be able to be affixed to the council chambers or obstruct the aisles. Another notable change is that an ordinance couldn't be introduced. An ordinance change wouldn't be introduced by a council member without first giving the city administrator the opportunity to provide feedback to us about what the budgetary impacts of that might be, and that would happen within a 30-day time period. And then there's also a change, as one public commenter noted, to public speaking time. So when there would be a large group of members coming to speak in front to council. If there were more than 30 members, instead of having the usual 3 minutes, there would be 2 minutes. Contrary to the framing in which it was presented earlier, what that does is actually provide more opportunity for folks to be able to speak at the beginning. So now we would have 15 15 members of the public that could speak at the beginning, and then the remainder overflow would happen at the end of the meeting. This would move that up so that 22 or 23 members of the public could speak to us in advance of our consideration. So I will, those are some of the notable changes. Maybe others have noted other ones and want to speak to them.
Councilmember Iyer.
I think Councilmember Briggs pretty adequately summarized all of the changes, at least the most notable ones. But I did want to underscore a couple of things. One, the prohibition, I guess, on adding items to the agenda is something that I think is a really good move. I think for a long time, things get added because they get worked on up until the deadline. I don't know about others. I'm a deadline addict, I guess I'll just say. And just making that deadline earlier, I think will just force us to get the work done in a more timely manner. And that's important because the sooner that those items are on the agenda, the sooner the public can see them and can react to them and have some time to give us feedback before the meeting so that we can really consider more public input before voting on items. So that is important. Again, the public speaking time is also important because we do have that time limit at the beginning of meetings, that 45-minute time limit. And, we do want to make sure that we hear from as many people as possible and not have to have as many flowing over into the overflow. And, this is how the public schools, AAPS does their speaking time. They divvy it up based on the number of speakers. We're not quite going that far, but just trying to give more people an opportunity to speak before we vote. That's the important thing, is hearing from the public before we're voting on items. So, thank you.
Councilor Ackman.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the changes to the sign rules because I think that this is responsive to a lot of community concerns that we've had from other speakers that come here and people watching on television when there's certain people encroaching very deliberately with their signs into the other person's speaking space. So just giving everybody their time to speak without being kind of interrupted by signs or otherwise. So thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Dish.
I'll pose this as a question. Do I still have to do this now that the things are in the ceiling? You do. Okay, thank you. So that made it sound like I'm hallucinating some little men, but no. I just wanted to, I'll pose as a question something that I know the answer to, but everyone who signs up in advance and wants to speak, whether it is virtually or in person, will still get the chance to speak under these new rules. And so I really appreciate the emphasis that you've put on saying that we will be able to hear from more people at the beginning of the meeting before we vote, because that comment time remains 45 minutes, but overflow time will accommodate everyone who has signed up to speak. Question mark.
Yes. Councilmember Cornell. Oh. Councilmember Medina. Sorry.
Thanks. Since we're all taking a second crack at this one, I will also say one of the things that I'm excited about and is that we're also now including kind of some additional time to ensure that all of the ordinances and resolutions that come before us have the opportunity to have a fiscal impact statement added to them, so that we also, particularly as we're working on these things, are keeping in mind that even sometimes the resolutions that we're doing can have a significant fiscal impact because of the work that they're directing, the ordinances that we're writing. And so this requires some additional time be added for the city administrator to review for ordinances. It grants him the option to add that statement to resolutions, and that's something that I'm particularly excited about with this change, and will continue to monitor, because I would like to make sure that even with our resolutions, we're making sure that we're continuing to have that fiscal outlook as well.
Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. DS2, thank you. Resolution to approve the creation of the Affordable Housing Capital Improvement Bonds Fund and appropriate proceeds from the 2024 Capital Improvement Bond not in the amount of $9 million. Moved by Councilmember Cornell, seconded by Councilmember Harrison. Discussion, please, of DS2. All in favor? All opposed? It is approved with 10 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement. DS3, resolution to approve fiscal year 2025 fee adjustments to the public services area, engineering, systems planning, public works, water treatment, and water resource recovery units. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Discussion, please, of DS3. Councilmember Dish.
There is really nothing more important than being responsible about city infrastructure. And that is what we are doing here with these fees.
Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? They are approved. DS4, resolution to approve fiscal year 2025 fee adjustments for the community services area. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Watson. Discussion, please, of DS4. All in favor? All opposed? They are approved. DS5, resolution to adopt Ann Arbor City budget and related property tax millage rates for fiscal year 2025. Moved by Councilmember Ackman, seconded by Councilmember Medina. Discussion, please, of DS5. I believe we have
Yes.
a introduction.
If you could bring Mr. Hutchinson forward.
I'm lost.
There's a staff introduction, and
For one of the amendments.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi, this is Nick Hutchinson, city engineer.
Mr. Hutchinson, my apologies. If this relates specifically to an amendment, then perhaps let's wait until and if that amendment is introduced, and then we'll roll with you. Otherwise,
Very well.
Thank you.
Standing by.
Excellent. Although it's been a pleasure to see you, if but briefly. Has this been moved and seconded? Yes, it has. Discussion. Councilmember Dish.
I would like to move Amendment 1 to DS5.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I want to remind the council that on April 1st, we passed a suite of economic development reforms in pursuit of crucial city goals, knowing that many of them would require action by the City Planning Commission and planning staff, and knowing that the Planning Department and the City Planning Commission are already stretched beyond capacity by their regular workflow, plus the comprehensive land use plan update. Council would receive funding requests from community services to execute our economic development directives later this summer and into the fall. The one-time funds provided by this amendment merely get ahead of those requests by providing funds tonight for work that we've asked them to do in pursuit of goals that Council has affirmed as high priorities. It is organizationally responsible to provide funding for high priority objectives, and it's also fiscally responsible because passing this amendment, even if we pass this amendment, we remain within policy guidance regarding the fund balance. So I hope you will join me in voting yes for this amendment.
Further discussion of amendment number 1. Councilmember Cornell.
I want to thank Councilmember Dish for working on what is not probably the sexiest amendment ever to a budget, but the thing that I think is really exciting about this is that we are acknowledging to staff that we're asking them to move quickly on some of these budget priorities, which have already been voted on, and recognizing that our current staff is doing the work that they're currently doing, and therefore picking up some of this additional work that the community is asking of them does require funding. And I think it's really interesting that we talked about there being a budget impact statement attached to certain resolutions and whatnot going forward. And I think that this is just kind of in a way, it's kind of jumping the shark to impose this on ourselves right now as acknowledgement that our current budget doesn't meet exactly what we're asking of staff. So I'm excited to provide resources for this work.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I appreciate certainly the spirit of where this is coming from. I did want to just note that, I think we have to be super careful with each amendment that we're thinking about, as you noted, sort of the impact on what our general fund reserve is going to be. I want to make it clear. I asked Ms. Bergeon earlier today what the impact would be. It's going to bring us to a 15.45% fund balance from a 15.6%. And so we are drawing ourselves down. 15% is the lowest that we do not want to go under that. And I think we do want to recognize that there may be other things that are coming up throughout the year that we might need to do budget amendments for. So just be cognizant of that as we're doing this. I think what's drawing me into thinking that this is something we need to support right now is obviously this has been a recommendation from staff to pursue the economic from the economic development report. We've prioritized this as ourselves as a council this spring. And we recognize that our planning staff just simply doesn't have the capacity to be able to do this without professional services report. And so professional, external help on this. So I think in this case, I'm willing to support that. But I think we should be very cognizant of these asks.
Further discussion? For my part, I'm excited about moving forward with this amendment. So many, we of course, have great ambitions with respect to improving our city, to expanding housing availability, to making transportation and our transportation network, which runs and follows our built network, and making that more accessible and for all users up and down the line, and expanding housing density and housing supply. As well as other zoning-related changes. We do not have the ability to do that at the pace that I think this council and the public desires. Passing this amendment will move us in that direction, and I'm excited by this prospect. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved.
Question, sir. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, Mr. Dohoney.
I'm not clear on the process for approving the budget. Are we voting on the amendments and you're then going to incorporate all of that into the budget, or are we assuming that the budget's already passed and you're just...
The budget has not yet, these amendments are incorporated into the budget. The budget has not yet been, the budget has been moved and seconded. It has not yet been passed. These are amendments proposed to the budget. When they run their course up and down, the budget will have been modified by the amendments that have been approved.
Okay.
Further discussion of the budget as amended? Councilmember Dish.
I would like to move Amendment 2 to DS5.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Cornell. Councilmember Dish, you still have the floor.
Okay, I'd like to remind everyone that this past spring, 2 experienced Level 5 staff members retired from the planning department. The city administrator's proposed budget provides for a revenue-neutral replacement of these positions by 3 new FTEs at Level 1. Despite that the budget adds an FTE for planning, this replacement is revenue neutral because of the significant pension and health benefit savings that happen when experienced staff members retire. So 2 of these new positions have been hired, and the people are great, and they are rapidly training into their new jobs. This amendment proposes to upgrade the 3rd of these new positions to Level 5 to better position planning staff to design and implement the many transformative ideas that I'm sure will come out of the comprehensive land use plan process. Upgrading this position will increase planning revenues in an amount equal to the cost of the upgrade. So I hope you will join me in supporting it.
Further discussion? So much of our work that we look to accomplish here at the council table and in our queries and exhortations from members of the public rolls through Planning Commission and the Planning Department. And so I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm glad that we're having additional capacity in terms of the new FTEs, but also glad about the prospect of having one of those FTEs having, I won't say gray hairs in connection with age reverse age discrimination, perhaps, but I will say with the requisite experience necessary to satisfy the requirements to be a level 5 planner. Further discussion. All in favor? All opposed? Amendment 2 is approved. Further discussion of the budget as amended. Councilmember Cornell.
I would like to move Amendment 3 to the table for consideration.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Ackman. Discussion, please. Councilmember Cornell, you still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank my colleagues who worked on this, Councilmember Briggs, Ghazi Edwin, Watson, and Ackman. This renews funding that was allocated to the budget last year. From the marijuana excise tax rebate to fund eviction prevention and low-income youth services. I know that my colleagues have many things to say about this, so I will be very brief in my remarks. Jennifer Hall, on request, sent information specific about the eviction prevention program and the impact that this funding had last year, and it was really compelling to me. Overall, there were 352 requests, 299 were approved. When you look at the data, the folks who were helped most by this were overwhelmingly helped by this were our disabled neighbors, women, and people of color. And what really struck me was that 63% of the recipients of this service had children. And so we're talking about families in our communities and keeping them in their homes. And I can't think of a better use for this type of funding and an expression of our values in the community.
Further discussion, Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this tonight. I think this is a biennial budget, and I'm glad to be able to carry forward these budgetary requests into year 2. I think we've heard about the power of the eviction prevention funds in terms of what those impacts are. We know the shortage of affordable housing that we have, being able to keep people in their homes rather than trying to find them new homes, and with in our affordable housing sites is a really impactful. It's very helpful. We know that the county has provided additional funds for eviction prevention, and so I'm hopeful that next year, there may be. Chances are there will never be sufficient funds to be able to address this need, but there will be more funding for this. The county has not yet determined how they're going to be sort of distributing these funds, and so I think is my understanding. And so I think those policies are still being set. With regards to the low-income youth services, we've seen the report from Jennifer Hall. We've also received communications in our email about how impactful those funds have been. This was something that I advocated pretty strongly for in last year's budget because when I knocked doors following a shooting in the 5th Ward and asked folks what they wanted to see, what they asked for was more not that it was directly related to the shooting, but they asked for more programming for youth services. They saw that as a real need in the community, and so I see this as a real delivery on that. I would like for folks to know for the nonprofits they're seeing increase, seeing their funding return this year. This is not a stable source of funding. I encourage those nonprofits to make sure that they're looking ahead, looking at not necessarily counting it in their budgets next year. We don't know if this is a reoccurring source of funding. We can look at our own fiscal outlook and understand that we may need to tighten our own belt the next couple of years. And so I strongly support this funding, but I'm supporting it for this year.
Councilor Ryer.
Yeah, I'm just fully in support of this and would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Councilor Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. You know, I appreciate both the work of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission and both of helping to manage both of these pots of funding, both for eviction prevention and for youth programming. And I'll be brief, but I just want to call out some of the work of an organization in my own ward, Community Action Network, and they expressed to me that the funding from this grant helped them to create a mental health and behavioral program for youth and hire a behavioral health director. And in addition, you know, during this time when we know our schools are so strapped for resources, this funding also helped Scarlett and Tappan Middle Schools to launch an evidence-based program called Check and Connect Mentoring Program, which allows AAPS to extend support for youth behavioral health support beyond the school day. So it's important, and I'm proud of us that we are continuing this effort. And thank you to the community orgs that make it happen.
Councilmember Watson.
I was proud to bring forward a similar amendment last year, and I'm glad to co-sponsor it again this year. This amendment allocates the $250,000 to eviction prevention because the best way to keep people housed is to catch them before they fall into homelessness. Sometimes only $1,000 is enough to help a family make their rent payments and keep their housing as their income stabilizes, avoiding the legally fraught and costly eviction process. At a time where there are few available shelter beds and few permanent supportive housing units, it is important to help community members stay housed. Remarkable thing about this funding is how quickly it goes out the door. Between March 7th and September 15th of 2023, we were able to help 299 households, as my colleagues mentioned. In addition, this is absolutely a racial equity issue. Black families made up 70% of the households assisted with eviction prevention funding last year. The other portion of this amendment dedicates $250,000 to youth services. We know that our low-income and minority youth have been impacted both by the current economic conditions and the residual effects of the pandemic. I was talking to a leader of one of the programs that Avalon helped fund this past year, CLR, and the Community Leadership Academy, and they told me that they were able to take a program that had been running Saturdays in the summer and start to run that Saturdays year round. And, you know, I hope my colleagues will support this amendment that is once again bolstering youth services on our Housing Commission sites and throughout the community.
Councilmember Song.
Last week, SOS Community Services held breakfast convening on the state of homelessness in the county, state of homelessness and hunger, and reflected on the resources available to them and how limited they are. What the city can contribute can be leveraged on several times over. So, for example, right now, SOS is trying to raise a total of $200,000 in order to attain a 4-to-1 match from HUD. They're at $94,000 currently. So when you think about what we're dedicating here and how, you know, what they're saying is that $15 to end homelessness for one day for a child can be leveraged times 4. So, yeah, I'll give you an example. If you're, what I want, let me just say that how to have every single council member here be in touch with the social service agency director and know the community, know the homelessness count, can name not only a shelter but food pantries in your own wards. That's progress. So thank you for having those conversations. So if I can only just share quickly just a story that SOS had put out with the family that they're working on. They have a family that's been homeless and on the shelter wait list for a year. They live in their car. They spend their days at the library. They deliver meals for DoorDash, but it's not enough. So this funding can make some real impacts in our community where we're facing, I think, up to a 10% increase in rents and have about 100 families living on the streets a night in our parking garages in our county. So it's not just in Arbor, it's in our county. So the work here, it's our dollars, our work here, but the impact goes throughout the county. If I can, I'd like to be added to the amendment as a sponsor. Thanks.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you. I also am just incredibly supportive. Want to thank the sponsors who worked on this and would like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Councilmember Dish.
I also am so pleased to see this and would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Further, Councilmember Harrison.
I just want to say I'm thankful for the work that was done on this, and I would also like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Further discussion. All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. Further discussion of the main motion as of the budget as amended. Councilmember Harrison.
I would like to move Amendment 4 to DS5.
Seconded by Councilmember Adina. Discussion. Councilmember Harrison, you still have the floor.
All right. The Rising Hope for Housing program is transforming lives by offering essential trauma-informed services like mental health counseling, housing advocacy, and job training. These services empower those impacted by the criminal legal system, help lower recidivism rates, and increase public safety. For those impacted by the criminal legal system, housing is the foundation of a stable life. Uninterrupted, safe housing dramatically reduces trauma and recidivism, enabling returning citizens to rebuild their lives with dignity and purpose. This year, we are requesting an additional $100,000 from the marijuana excise tax revenue, bringing our total to $500,000 for this program. As demand grows, so must our support. The jail voucher program, aiding those returning citizens fighting homelessness and recidivism, is set to expand. We must meet this need head on. Last year, we took a stand against the war on drugs and justices by redirecting marijuana tax revenue to support those impacted by the criminal legal system. This was restorative justice in action. Community support is the lifeblood of these programs. We've heard the powerful voices of returning citizens and dedicated organizations. They've told us that sustainable funding is essential for continuous effective support. Securing this funding will help us uphold our commitment to building a strong and inclusive community and continue to make meaningful and lasting impacts. A yes vote today sends a clear message. We believe in our returning citizens. We recognize their potential and the crucial role of community backing. We've listened to their stories and to the organizations working tirelessly for their success. Trauma-informed supportive services gives returning citizens the tools they need for long-term success, not just in terms of helping to reduce recidivism rates or continued employment, but also in reconnecting with family and reintegrating into the community. For many, the initial focus was housing, but they can continue to utilize services for needs in other areas. This underscores the importance of multiple services and agencies working together collaboratively. Because we can't rely solely on fluctuating marijuana excise tax revenues, I am also requesting that our city administrator examine options of securing permanent funding sources for the Rising Hope for Housing program. But I am also asking the collaboration of community organizations to look for funding sources, since this is not a stable funding source. This resolution allows us to leverage marijuana excise tax revenues to make a positive impact, creating a safer, healthier, and more prosperous Ann Arbor and community. And I hope you all will join me in supporting it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I can say it better than Councilmember Harrison just did, but the importance and the impact that this program has. I think we've been hearing also from members of the community who have been directly impacted by this program over the last several meetings, and I just want to reiterate my thanks and gratitude to them for their courage in coming forward and continuing to speak out on behalf of themselves and the impact that this had in helping them to reintegrate into the community. And so I'm just really grateful for Councilmember Harrison's leadership in this area and for continuing to be a champion of this program. And I also encourage my colleagues' support. I think it's an incredible program we should keep funding. Thanks.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. This is a great program. We've heard testament of so many folks who've come before us and spoken how powerfully this has impacted their lives, the lives of those that they're serving through their work. And so I think it's I'm glad that we've been able to do this in these last two budgets. I appreciate Councilmember Harrison that you are looking to see if there's a recurring opportunity for us to be able to support this or work with I would assume potentially our partners at the county to figure out how their stable sources of funding might be able to be secured through that. I am going to sound like a broken record tonight. I'm just going to. Our fiscal outlook in fiscal year 2029 shows a recurring budget deficit of I shouldn't even think that I can remember numbers for more than a second. 5.9 million by fiscal year 2029, and so I know that there are, if those we have a conservative forecast to make sure that we are, being aware of that. Hopefully, we don't see that, and that our economic development work is bringing in the revenue that we want to see, so that we get to be able to continue to support really important programs like this in our community.
Further discussion? Councilmember Gaziano and then Watson.
I also just want to thank Councilmember Harrison for your dedicated work on this. And it's been really astounding to see the community response to this program, and just the personal testimonies have been so moving. And I think that in a city like Ann Arbor, where we know that the affordability crisis is like exponentially rising, and we have the highest recidivism rate of all counties in the state, this is exactly where a program like this should be. So I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson.
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, but I also just wanted to highlight the fact that this amendment has and this program has brought together a diverse set of nonprofits with the city's own support, contribution of supportive connection. So it's not only leveraging groups that are working together that perhaps hadn't been working together in the same way before, but it's also adding our city staffers and supportive connections. And I've had judges in courtrooms here in Ann Arbor talk about the fact that this is really aiding people sometimes even as they leave the courtroom. I can't say it any better than the community members who've presented their testimonials before council, but I'm grateful that the city is supporting this. And if you look at the documentation, this is really in sort of the ramp up phase, and we're seeing growth every month by the number of families served. Thank you.
Further discussion? I too am excited that we are moving forward with this program. It is obviously a crucial need in our community, and it is a need that we are able to satisfy through this important effort. So I'm grateful for the work done by the initial drafters. I'm asked to be added as a co-sponsor. And I am looking forward to how we can permanentize programs such as this, initiatives such as this. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. Further discussion of the main motion as amended. Councilmember Iyer.
I'd like to move Amendment 5.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Dish. Councilmember Iyer, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So this amendment is to appropriate $100,000 from the general fund budget to equitable communications to the community. This is an idea that I've been thinking about really over the past 3 years that I've been serving, based on various conversations I've had with constituents, but it really was, the need for it was really solidified to me in one particular interaction with a constituent, an elderly woman in my ward who had a really, really hard time figuring out who her council reps were. And tough time navigating the website when she finally was able to find it. And, it just, and she and I spent a good 45 minutes on the phone talking about how much money the city spends on the website and the digital communications and all the ways that we reach out to residents who have the ability to use those forms, and how very precious little we do for folks like her. And so really this is a drop in the bucket when we think about everything we spend on communicating to the public digitally. But the idea here is that that each council member would be able to once a year send out a small mailer to every household in their ward. This is informational in nature, so just letting them know who their council member is, should they need them, and giving some information on city services that they may want to avail themselves of, city resources, eviction, the kinds of things that we've been talking about here tonight, eviction protection or prevention and things like that. And a small bit of news about new initiatives in the city. So if this passes, the next step would be that the admin committee would put together some parameters for what could be included, what couldn't be included, the process by which things are vetted, city attorney, making sure that we're not putting out incorrect information, and that we are hewing to the the parameters and really the spirit of what this is, which is one point of contact once a year that we know people will get in their mailboxes, that they can tuck away and have on hand should they need to have someone assist them with interacting with the city in the future.
Councilor Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. So, I've added my name to this because I think it's completely appropriate that part of our communications budget be allocated for us to present information in different formats. That's a disability best practice. There have been studies that show if you keep everything online, if everything is digital, there's a significant segment of the population who often need the resources and services the most, who never get to hear about them. This is not, as we were led to believe prior during public comment, it's going to be campaign information. It's not going to be personal kind of opinions of council members. This is going to be objective. Who is your council member? What are services available to you? I hope they will also be brailled. I hope to talk to communications about that. And yeah, everything should not be available online if we want everyone to have equal access to information. So I hope others will join us in supporting this.
Councilor British.
Yeah, I just want to underscore that this is not funding for council members to send out newsletters. That would be, first of all, you wouldn't have a newsletter that went out once a year, or I really hope it doesn't get to be that slow in my case. And those do provide analysis, and they really do shift into campaign mode, I think, newsletters, even as informative as they are, and it just would be completely inappropriate. So we want to make clear that that's not what this is about, and it is to serve residents. One of the residents in my ward has had trouble intersecting with one of our energy efficiency programs because she does not have access to internet. And I canvassed her and then came back and followed up with her. And then she called me and said, I'm still having trouble. And so I followed up with her again. And it's great that she happened to be home the day that I canvassed her. But otherwise, she's not effectively served. And she doesn't have the information she needs.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. And I appreciate the intent with which this is brought forward. I think we can all agree that there is a digital divide, that there's need for communication to residents in a wide variety of different mechanisms to make sure that we reach people where they're at. We've seen a report around public engagement, and there's certainly reaching people at their homes is the best way to go. I would say that I think that it's appropriate that we take a little bit more time to identify the details of this before we appropriate funding for it. We're not talking about communications from the city directly, written communications. We're talking about communications from city council members. And there are obviously a lot of parameters that we'll need to be following if we if communications are coming from a council member. Even talking about what future communications could be, there certainly could be a political component of that. And I think that it's difficult in some ways to ask the legal office to be the arbiter of this. So I think that this warrants conversation. I think it warrants investigation. I think I would prefer that I would suggest that we spend the next year answering these questions, making sure that we've identified how it's actually going to happen and if it can actually happen, and then come forward in the next fiscal year's budget, because certainly we wouldn't want to do this necessarily for a year. We'd want to start an initiative so that we're talking about a recurring cost. I will note that this is bringing our budget balance to 15.3%. So it's also bringing us pretty close to that baseline level that we don't want to go under. So again, I think it's great that we're thinking about this, that we're investigating what our options are, but I'd prefer if we did the work first and then came forward with the proposal.
Further discussion? Councilmember Song.
So when I saw this, I immediately thought of how the county clerk has a directory of elected officials throughout the county at every level. And I imagine that perhaps this could be similar to that, but focused just on the city. Just this past weekend, I was driving through Ward 3 and ran across a flooded street. And when we're talking to this college student, it was pretty clear they didn't know who their city council rep was. And looking up on the city and looking at the lines and not seeing where the streets are named for our wards, there's a little bit of a guessing game between 3 and 2. But we were able to find their way and situate them. There's incidences where I had to direct foreign nationals who are here through the website, navigate that. It is really difficult. If there was a way to welcome, we have so many new residents here, and have this be more accessible, even if it's just a simple one pager on here's fix it. This is who to contact if your garbage isn't picked up. I mean, there's just like these basic numbers that we can share, and I don't think everyone is on the same page in understanding how the city functions, especially if you're not coming from. And sometimes it's not even us, even if we can just say, actually, that's Debbie Dingle. It's not us when it comes to these concerns. It can be really helpful to kind of point to also social service agencies. This week I shared Hawk's number with someone who was at risk of losing their housing, the Humane Society's number because they couldn't find a place so that they could bring their puppy with them. So all these services that we've known since we've been here for a while, we've lived here for decades, is not so intuitive, I think, for new residents, for students, for international folks. But we do put out communications like our property tax exemption applications at every single public library branch in multiple languages. So, if we can follow that kind of path of accessibility, not political, it's just, here's who to reach in these instances. Welcome to Ann Arbor. Thank you for staying here. It's something you can put on your fridge. So that's what I'm imagining. So I'm in support of this.
Councilmember Adina.
Thank you, Mayor. I will acknowledge that when I first saw this one, I was a little torn as somebody who previously worked in the state legislature, and I think anybody who has received mail from their legislator knows that our state legislators do something similar to this, where there's a tax tips newsletter that goes out, there's senior information for seniors, information for veterans that goes out from your state legislators' offices and from their fund in order to provide informational content to their constituents, and I think that's what this is intended for as well. And I think a part of my skepticism was very much that I did not want for us to be able to put out editorial newsletters on the taxpayer dime in order to fund something like this. And I appreciate Councilmember Iyer for taking my call or to talking with me over the weekend about this a little bit more, because I think very much the intent behind this is that the very next step would be for the admin committee to start developing rules around what this would look like. And so making sure that we're putting together something that is absolutely factual and informational in nature, and not something that's editorializing or explaining positions on issues or things like that, but rather is actual functional, helpful information for residents. Obviously, I think one of the things that we've seen a lot in the news right now is some of the members of Congress using their office budget to send out, official communications close to an election. I think we would need to develop timelines around, how far out from an election a newsletter would be able to be sent, things like that, to ensure that these aren't campaign materials or used in that way. And so I am willing to support this tonight on the basis that we're providing funding for that process to be developed and for us to be able to continue having this conversation so that we can move this forward in admin, we can develop those processes, we can come to consensus and potentially even vote on what those rules are, on how we ultimately would be able to expend these dollars. But if we don't have the funds in it, all of that work wouldn't come to any type of fruition in the next year. So I'm willing to support this on that basis tonight, and look forward to that next step.
Further discussion? Councilmember Ackman.
Like others have said, I also appreciate the intent behind this, and I think we're all familiar with people that don't know how to access information easily, and I think thinking of this in the larger ecosystem of how we provide information makes a lot of sense. However, like Councilmember Briggs, I'm concerned that this is coming, right now as an amendment from the general fund for from the general fund balance for a new thing that still needs to be kind of thought out. So I would also prefer that this gets kind of hashed out in the admin committee and then considered for the next budget cycle as part of the communications budget. Thanks.
For my part, I think there's a great deal to be said for the need for us to communicate directly with residents, say us as a municipal organization, for us to communicate with residents about the services that are available, about the changes in the city that might be in the offing, about what it is that we here at City Hall are doing to improve the basic services, or to provide the basic services upon which people are relying. That communication needs to take a wide variety of forms, and I think it makes all the sense to emphasize our need to access folks who do not who do not follow the Twitter, who do not regularly access our website and so forth. At the same time, I do also share the concern about this rolling through council, perhaps rather than the city's ordinary communications office, which I think could also provide this function. It is an area of communication to residents, to community members about what it is that we are doing at City Hall for them that does warrant inquiry and augmentation. But for many of the reasons articulated previously from Councilmember Ackman, perhaps, and Councilmember Briggs too, I'm going to take a pass on this particular amendment, but look forward to learning more about what it is that we do with respect to print communication to residents and how that might be optimized to make sure that we hit everybody in the community where they are and where they take in their information. Further discussion. Councilmember Watson Song.
Okay. So in doing a little thinking about this, I looked, the city created a equitable engagement committee that came out with an equitable engagement report, and that was released on July 17th, 2023. So this was not at all these what I'm going to read is a part of a survey and part of this 58-page report that wasn't written by council. Several survey takers lament the loss of a daily newspaper and feel that in its absence there is a gap in media coverage. Moreover, the imposition of a paywall on local news is an equity issue raised by some respondents. There are several recommendations for a regular city-issued newsletter in print or digital that provides updates on projects, events, and summarize board/commission decisions. While an alternative exists to subscribe to specific project updates based on interest or location, residents may miss the wider news cycle or feel overwhelmed with the number of subscription options. So I think that there is a real need for this. I'll acknowledge that I'm not very well versed in how exactly the budget of the communications office functions, and I know, for example, there are I think that there might be ways if we were to pursue this, and I think we should talk about it in admin committee, but if we were to pursue this, perhaps there are other communications that might become redundant, or this could be, our council contact information could be folded into other communications. So similar to to a few of my colleagues, I don't think I will support, or I won't be supporting this tonight.
Councilmember Song.
I just wanted to point that Ann Arbor Public Schools has its own marketing and communications team, much like how we do here in the city. And they are former news editors from radio, from print. And it makes a difference how you communicate. I mean, they don't have print. They come from print, and that's notable. And how they share the work of the city, the achievements of the city, of the schools. I'm just looking for a corollary here. So when I think about this amendment, I'm thinking about how if we can restore faith and confidence in our work here, given there's so much misinformation online that is politically driven, whereas we can just present the facts of the city as is, the facts of the city, that's what's to come, how to reach us, and if it's not us, then how to reach the amazing city administrator, Milton Dehoney, and his staff. So anyways, I don't think I've communicated that well, so maybe it would have been better in print.
I've got Briggs, Dish, Harrison, Gaziedwan.
Thanks. I think we can all agree that print communications are lacking, and I think there's just a difference between city communications and potentially city council communications. And I was hoping that maybe Attorney Cower might be willing to weigh in terms of any ways that any thoughts around sort of legal implications of having different types of communications, or if there's any feedback on that, I would welcome hearing it.
Thank you, Councilmember Briggs. Certainly, from the city staff's perspective and the city attorney's office perspective, council members are responsible for their own compliance with campaign finance laws. Of course, we're willing to help you navigate that, and without really seeing what this communication will look like, I cannot say one way or the other, but hearing the intent that has been expressed on this floor, it appears the intent is not to have political communications, but to have factual communications. With that intent, I think the communication would be okay, but I cannot say for sure without looking at the actual communication. If we intended for factual information to be communicated, I think it would be safer to have it as a city communication versus a communication from the elected body. You could achieve this intent with an amendment to the amendment by making it a city staff or communications office directed communication.
Councilmember Briggs, you still have the floor? Councilmember Dish.
I really appreciate all the feedback on this amendment, and I hope that I can say something without appearing self-important, but as city council members, we are the face of the city to some of our constituents. And so what is appealing to me about what is proposed here is that there is a personal touch. It isn't, here's the sticker on your trash can. Those have been really effective. Actually, the stickers on the recycling bin, don't put that in, put this in. But this is, hi, here's me, and here are some things about the city that you should know, and here are some services I think could help you, and here again is my email address. So, and I am, I would be happy for this to work out any way that it works out, but I just wanted to put that in the mix.
Got Harrison, Ghazi Edwin, Iyer, Radina. Councilmember Harrison.
So I just wanted to also be clear that, prior to, I added myself to this amendment, but I did, I spoke with Councilmember Iyer a couple times. I spoke with her today, and I did have some concerns about campaign finance violations and laws, but and when you're thinking about accessibility, and we know that everyone does not have access to email, what I'm thinking about is for the city to communicate to our residents, maybe recent policy changes or, information, perhaps where the naloxone kits located within the community, where can you get help, information about supportive connections, regarding ward specific, for example, OSI is doing a tour, so in different wards, so perhaps maybe something like that would be added to this. But I just think that in my thought is that basically the city of Ann Arbor would be communicating with our residents about information that would be helpful for them to know, not so much what we are doing. So that, anyway, that's the conversation I had earlier and with Councilmember Iyer. So thank you.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin.
Thank you. I just want to echo some of the things that Councilmember Harrison shared that I too wanted to clarify. And I think that I wanted to clarify that this was not going to be campaigning. It wasn't going to be outreach to our constituents saying like, vote for me, but it's supposed to be objective updates on city services, decisions that we made as a body, and also like, who's your council member? And I think having information about who's your council member and my phone number and email shouldn't be, we do serve them. And we serve them, as for whatever they need in the ward. And I see this as something that's coming from the city, not coming from city council. So I think that there's some kind of confusion that we all have around this. I also want to say that, Washington County Board of Commissioners has something that's similar. It's objective. These are the decisions that have been made, resources available. And, as Councilmember Song said, their online is saturated with misinformation that is very politically leading. And in that age and in this era, I think we have a responsibility to be delivering information in all different sorts of formats so everyone has equal access.
Councilmember.
Thank you. This has been a really great discussion. And I think it really speaks to the kinds of ideas that we can come up with. I'm sensing a lot of consensus around the idea generally. And no matter how this vote goes, I do think that we're going to come up with something that that could be a real improvement for our residents. I did want to talk a little bit about the dollar figure that I put on this and just note that it's strictly for the cost of printing and mailing these out. So when we start talking about, maybe city staff could actually put this together, now we're talking about a whole different level of funding that would be necessary because city staff doesn't just have the ability to, just take on something like this. The communications department is actually quite small. And it's not something I've spoken to Administrator Dehoney about because that's not what I was envisioning at all. I was envisioning we put these together. They get reviewed, and then they get printed and sent out. So, yeah, if we're concerned about cost too, it's just another thing to weigh. If we're thinking, we could just have city staff put it together, that raises the cost probably exponentially.
Councilmember Radina. Thank you.
I have a question for probably Ms. Prashan about the, if we were to allocate this tonight and, admin doesn't come to consensus on what the process is, or we do and this moves forward, but council members choose not to exercise this ability and don't use their mailing, would the portion or the entirety of the $100,000 go back to the fund balance, or would it be able to be spent in other ways?
Well, technically, it could be spent in other ways, but in the end, any unspent funds would be returned to fund balance, yes.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Watson.
To me, I think that there might be a difference between ward-specific communication and council member-specific communication. So, for example, if two members were to be sending information together, perhaps that creates some check on, the choices of what goes in it, because it has to be judged by both a senior and a junior member, like what is applicable to the whole ward. But I'm sort of offering that, but I think the stuff I've heard around the table tonight, it seems like there's not a lot of consensus on what exactly the vision is, and I think this is something that that could be put together and hash out in admin committee, but I think to put a number behind it, and I just think it's not. I think I would honestly support a conversation and amendment later in the year on this, if we could put something together. But I think as it is now, I'm just hearing a lot of different ideas around the table. Yeah.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Briggs on Amendment 5.
Councilmember Briggs?
No.
Councilmember Cornell?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
No.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackman?
No.
Amendment carries.
Further discussion, the main motion as amended. Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Amendment Number 6, the amendment to prioritize crosswalk upgrades on Stone School Road.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Ghazi Edwin. Councilmember Medina, you still have the floor. Oh, thank you very much.
Poor Nick.
Mr. Hutchinson, having waited so patiently, I just pretend. Alas, my earnest apologies.
No problem. You've had to sit there and look at my face for all this time. We had a couple of questions related to Amendment Number 6. The first one was asking for a list of the enhanced crosswalks under consideration, along with an update on any of the prioritization work that has been done to date. The list of the 32 crosswalk installations and upgrades has been attached to this item in Legistar, so you can find that there. And that list does include the 3 locations on Stone School Road that are discussed in this amendment. We have completed the framework for the crosswalk request prioritization system, and we're currently working on scoring the locations based on that system. And because budgets are limited, this prioritization system will identify locations that are anticipated to have the biggest impact. And this system takes into account such factors as community support, proximity to schools, transit, and other pedestrian attractors, crash history, equity, address density, number of vehicle travel lanes, posted speed limit, and whether or not the location is identified in the transportation plan. We anticipate having this list of locations prioritized within the next month, and then we would be using the results to program future work. And then the second request was asking for an update on the Maple Road RRFB at Dickon Woods. And I'm happy to report that that crosswalk and RFB were installed earlier this year. And then I am here along with Raymond Hess, our transportation manager, to answer any further questions you may have.
Thank you, Mayor. Colleagues, for context, Stone School Road between Eisenhower and Ellsworth is an area of heavy pedestrian traffic with several townhome, condo, and apartment complexes, as well as single-family neighborhoods on both sides of the street. Stone School gives residents access to multiple city parks, Bryant Elementary School, the Jewish Community Center, and their associated early childhood center, and the Jimmy Hill Purple House serving our homeless community. Additionally, as this remains one of Ann Arbor's more affordable areas, a significant number of residents in the apartment and condo complexes cross the street daily to access public transit to get to work, go shopping, or simply move around our city. Children cross the road to access our parks, play basketball at Bryant School in Clinton Park, visit nearby playgrounds, and to get to school. Because of all this, crosswalks on Stone School are heavily trafficked. Unfortunately, due to the width of Stone School Road, with 3 vehicle lanes and 2 bike lanes at one of these crossings, the visibility challenges at both Birch Hollow and Pheasant Run crosswalks, because of their proximity to the I-94 overpaths and curves in the roadway, vehicles are regularly traveling at higher than posted rates of speed and fail to yield for pedestrians waiting to cross or worse within the roadway. Based on engineering staff review of these locations, there now seems to be acknowledgement that these crossings qualify for additional improvements, including the addition of RRFBs. Unfortunately, for many years, nearby residents of both the 3rd and 4th wards have been begging their city to help them cross the street safely. They have attended my coffee hours, called and emailed, and because I live near Stone School Road, they regularly stop by my home to ask for updates after experiencing yet another close call. For over 3.5 years, I have been trying over and over again to get safe crosswalks on Stone School prioritized. For over 3.5 years, prior to this evening, I had received no commitment that this roadway would be addressed at all, and definitely no timeline to fix the problem. While I appreciate that staff is expected to begin working on prioritizing upgrades to crosswalks, that prioritization work is not complete, and lacking prioritization, I am asking council to act. I recognize that this amendment is a bit uncomfortable for some of us. We don't typically bring this narrow of a direction to the table. But while we've been lucky there hasn't been a reported vehicle pedestrian accident in this area since 2019, when a pedestrian was struck by a vehicle after getting off of a city bus, as someone who lives in this area and commutes on this road daily, the near misses, speeding vehicles, and the sheer number of children trying to cross this roadway alone make it only a matter of time. I cannot in good conscience continue to tell my constituents that we know this roadway is a problem, but there is no existing plan or timeline to fix it. I ask for your support.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
I'd like to thank Councilmember Radina for trying to elevate the issues around crosswalk safety, around need for crosswalk improvements. This is, as you can see from the list of need in our city, this is an ongoing and desperate need in each ward of ours. It is something that I've served on Transportation Commission. This is my 2nd time now on council. I know Councilmember Ackman has as well. We have received we've received those pleas from all across the city, and I've received them from many of these sites or locations in the 5th ward, where I've also heard those same stories. It's one of the reasons we have adopted a Vision Zero-based transportation plan. We are refocusing our resources to invest greater resources in pedestrian safety and bicycle safety, because our vulnerable users require that. But I would caution us from picking favorites on this list, because we each have them, right? We each know that there are places in our ward that require safety improvements yesterday. What we need to do, as difficult as it is to allow for a prioritization model to be able to rank all of these different factors. And I'm not sure that, if there's a problem in that process, then we need to improve the process. But to identify one spot in the city above all others, I think jeopardizes this work that we're trying to do uniformly across our city.
Further discussion? Councilmember Gaziano.
So this is something that I support because I too have heard from many ward residents just how vulnerable of an area this is in regards to safety concerns. And as the resolution stipulates, and Councilmember Radina has shared, this area is heavily trafficked by numerous vulnerable populations, children, older adults, people gaining services at different service organizations. And we know, based upon the analysis by the engineering staff, that it requires additional improvements. And I too worry that if we don't prioritize this now, we're going to, inevitably see something that we could have prevented, such as a pedestrian accident. So I'm supporting this tonight. And I think as well that Ward 3, being the most socioeconomically diverse, it's really important that we think about accessibility and infrastructure and safety across the board, both physically and in all ways.
Councilmember Ackman.
I have some things to say, but first I have a question, because one thing that I noticed that's not on this list is Jackson, where we know somebody was killed and there's a crosswalk being installed. So can you tell me why Jackson Road is not on this list?
That one is actually in progress. I can turn it over to Raymond Hess here for a timeline, but that's why it's not on the list, is because it's already actively being done.
Yay.
Yeah, that's correct, Nick. We are putting American Rescue Planning Act funds towards those, ARPA funds. And so we are continuing to work with MDOT on the permitting process. And so we are awaiting final direction on MDOT for those installations.
Thank you so much. So, I want to echo my appreciation for elevating this issue. It's important. I understand why you care. I understand why you want to advocate for this. But I look at this list of 32 items, many of them that I've been directly involved with communications on, and I see many of the traits that you've cited at this table with the ones that I'm familiar with: vulnerable populations, proximity to school. Some of these are actually 5 lanes, not just 3 lanes. So I cannot in good conscience sit at this table tonight without a prioritization, enumeration, and say that your particular site deserves to be above all the rest. I just can't do that. So I won't be supporting this tonight.
Further discussion? Councilmember Cornell.
I actually have a question, especially since we have Mr. Hess here for a very limited time. Might as well put him in the hot seat so he remembers us fondly. The list of 32, as the prioritization, after the prioritization takes place, what is the timeline for completing all 32?
Yeah, it's a good question. Some of the improvements will cost more than others. So as Councilmember Ackman just mentioned, for example, a crosswalk across a 5-lane section of roadway would, per our crosswalk design guidelines, suggest that an overhead RRFB would be warranted, possibly with the installation of pedestrian refuge islands. So that could cost upwards of $100,000. Whereas side-mounted RFBs, which is the more traditional installation where you have dual-faced rectangular rapid flashing beacons on either side of the roads, the yellow signs with flashing lights, those are about $20,000 for a new installation. So it's really a question of matching those needs against the funding, against the prioritization, and kind of chipping away at those as much as possible. I will note we did get a congressional earmark, which we hope to augment some of this implementation as well. I actually just sent a note to the Michigan Department of Transportation during this meeting, indicating that we do want to kind of advance that project forward. So there will be some additional funds that we can put towards this. But again, the idea is we would just kind of follow the prioritization ranking and address those, kind of from top to bottom.
Further discussion of the amendment? Councilmember Song.
I approached Councilmember Briggs and Ackman about a similar issue in April, and just checking to see if there was an appetite for an amendment specifically on traffic calming. I think for all of us, that's a top priority, or it's an issue that a lot of our constituents bring up. And as we try to kind of find ways to support families around schools in the area, it's a it's a pretty constant request. And I have an email from Councilmember Ackman reminding me that we did last year make traffic calming a consideration in all road reconstruction projects. So it's a conversation that's in the CIP. As much as I wanted to support this particular amendment, I think that reminder was a really good reminder that we have a process and that we are prioritizing traffic calming as it comes and as funding comes. So hopefully Mr. Raymond and Mr. Hutchinson can find more funding throughout the year. And perhaps we can revisit a time when we will find more state funding for safe routes to school. So I'm really sorry. I did want to support this. I really did, but I had to really think about the process and again how we've already committed to this being in the CIP.
Further discussion? Councilmember Adina.
Thank you. And I also just want to stress, I know that I knew this is going to be an uphill battle tonight. I don't know exactly how the vote will go yet, but this is something that I think, unfortunately, this is coming forward tonight because I don't think our process is currently adequate. And some of that is the decisions we're making tonight about the, frankly, kind of paltry sum of money that we're putting into this as a whole. I think $250,000 is what's budgeted for this work across the city. And we just heard that one of these might cost $100,000, and there's a list of 32. And so as we continue to think about the kids who cross these streets and don't have any way of alerting the traffic that they're about to cross, I am open to working with anyone at this body on either a mid-year amendment or amendments for future years to make sure that we are putting more money into this because these roadways simply are not safe, and it is only a matter of time.
Councilmember Harrison.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I wanted to support it as well. However, actually, Councilmember Rodina is familiar with discussions I've been having about Duveron Road and the challenges, the gap in sidewalks. We've got Avalon Housing, so we have, vulnerable community members that are living off of Duveron that don't have vehicles. I've seen mothers with their babies, walking, trying to get to the library, really walking in the street. I've seen one of my constituents is in a motorized wheelchair and is often, traveling along Duveron Road with no sidewalks and trying to travel in the bike lane, and really he's in the street. That individual is in the street. I have had conversations with my state rep. I am continuing to look for funding sources, but like I said, wanting to support this. However, I know, and I've had some discussions, I think, with some of my other peers here in this body about this Duveron Road. So unfortunately, I'm unable to support it this evening, even though I wanted to. But thank you for the work on it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, and I guess I'd like to just draw attention to much of the transportation work that we're trying to do around the city now is to improve the safety of all users. And so when we bring forward resolutions that are around road reconfigurations that are about reducing road widths from 5 to 3 lanes, that's about slowing traffic. And what that allows is for those crosswalks to be more visible, for traffic to have it makes those crosswalk improvements less costly. It allows drivers to be able to see those crosswalks better. Bike lanes don't just serve to serve bicyclists, they also serve to narrow the roadway and to calm traffic and to reduce crashes for motor vehicles. We have a lot of the work that we're doing is interrelated, and it is all about trying to both improve the accessibility of our community and improve the safety of our residents. And so, more and more, we're seeing our budgets aligned with the way that our people are trying to move around our city. And you're right, we need more resources for this. This is a biennial budget, but Next year, Mr. Dahoney, it's an opportunity to be making sure that we're drawing as many of our resources as we can to advancing our our Vision Zero-based transportation plan and the goals of it. So I completely agree. These are priorities. It's priorities for all of our residents all across the city. They deserve to be able to cross the street without being killed. Our kids deserve to be able to walk to school without necessarily having to be, have a parent by their side until they're, way into high school. There's a lot of work that we need to be doing in our community to improve the safety and accessibility.
Councilmember Cornell.
So I had heard from constituents in my colleague's ward about Stone School. I think we've heard it several times here at the table. And I came in supporting this, and now I'm realizing I think what I'm hoping I'm hearing from my colleagues is that when this that is such a hard word, when this plan happens and it comes back, that we can have a real conversation at this table around what our priorities are and around where that funding should go, and to work, I think, to be responsible to our constituents for improving that safety while working within the framework that city staff provides us. I think the sense of urgency around this work warrants that conversation when that plan comes out. And I think that sense of urgency around that work also, to Councilmember Briggs' point, really needs to be something that we are thinking about now for budget next year, because everyone who's spoken has acknowledged that the funding is inadequate to ensure safety on our streets, and that's wrong.
Councilmember Dish.
I just wanted to say what a helpful and thoughtful discussion this has been. And I appreciate that there's been a distinction made between the prioritization of the 32 items on the list and the pot of money that's available to execute the improvements that we need to execute. And because I am one of the things I've learned on this body is that it is really excellent to have staff prioritize, because they see things much more broadly than I do. And I really trust, I really trust staff's prioritization. I was going to say I often do, but I really want to say that I do. And the constraints, we've been working against constraints with a lot of things with our traffic calming program, and we figured out how to speed that one up because there were so many people who wanted them, and we used to have a backup of, it seemed like it was 9 years. And I think that got considerably shortened. And so I think what we need to do is work on, we as a body need to put some serious thought into our priorities. And I think that I love everything we're doing, and I think it's all urgent, but we are spreading ourselves too thin. And I think we are going to need, for the next biennial budget, which will bring us up against the structural deficit, I think we're going to need to do some hard thinking about what we're willing to give up in order to accomplish very well some of the basic crucial things that we believe people deserve in the city. And so that's a charge to us. But the other kind of prioritization about what, where, that's for staff.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Briggs.
Councilmember Briggs?
No.
Councilmember Cornell?
No.
Councilmember Dish?
No.
Councilmember Harrison?
No.
Councilmember Song?
No.
Councilmember Watson?
No.
Councilmember Rodina?
Yes.
Councilmember Ghazi Edwin?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Councilmember Uyer?
No.
Councilmember Ackman?
No.
The amendment fails.
Further discussion of the main motion as amended. That is to say, the budget. Councilmember Rodina.
I just want to acknowledge all of the incredible staff work and time that goes into preparing this budget for us every year. We're all looking at it on our screens right now, but we also get a hard copy, and it is a thick binder, and that's not even all of the details. And so a ton of work, a ton of hours go into this every year. And then they have to answer a lot of questions from us and be responsive to all of our requests and our amendments and all of those things. And a lot of the conversations and discussions we have don't even make it to amendments. And so I just want to express gratitude to all of our staff who have to put work into this throughout the organization. And also just say I am once again proud to be able to vote for this budget tonight, because it puts a lot of money into the values that we hold dear as a community, from our sustainability work to our pedestrian and cycling safety work to renewable energy and an energy future. And so there is so much to be proud of in this. I think we have just had a conversation about ways that we may want to continue to adjust and tweak those priorities in the future. And that's the exciting part about being able to revisit this every 2 year. We revisit every year, but we really pass a comprehensive budget every 2 years. And so thank you to the staff and my colleagues for their thoughtful consideration in this work.
Councilmember Dish.
I also want to add my voice to what will be, I think, a pretty large chorus of praise for the budget. In the past couple of years, the budgets have been much more easily digestible because they had a clear focus. And this year's focus was on horizon issues as well as immediate issues. And that has been very helpful, because in every area of this city, big needs are coming up because of the age of everything in this city. And so I have really appreciated how easy it has been to get a grasp of the whole. Sometimes just the lines, line after line after line, it's very hard to abstract from that. And I feel that we've really been given a bird's eye level view as well as the detailed view, and it's made deliberation about the budget very easy and fruitful.
Councilmember Briggs.
I too would like to thank staff. Obviously, this is a comprehensive. There's a lot in this budget, and it says a lot that what we did was not to pull out things that the administrator had proposed, but to try to add in, make sure that we had some additional priorities that we focused our attention on. I appreciate all of the staff responses to the questions that we asked, and particularly I had asked a number of questions around the development of an economic development office, and a lot of my concerns this year were around funding, but this is the one. This is the one area that when we invest, hopefully, some resources in, there will be, hopefully, it's the one area that we'll see revenue coming back to the city in a few years. And the fact is that a city of our size should have a strategy that we're implementing around economic development, and we should have a coordinated effort around that, and that requires staff. So I appreciate the work for staff for bringing that in. We don't usually see those sort of changes in this sort of in between year, but I think it was important for us to get started sooner rather than later. The one thing that I asked a budget question around that was told that I did not need to introduce a budget amendment for, but I would have, was a small element around salt usage. And that is something I'm glad to see that we, yep. So, I think as we're clearing roads, what we heard after this last winter was there were some challenges with getting our car lanes and our bike lanes cleared. And I'm glad that we have a different strategy moving forward, different equipment, and different, we're going to be implementing some different policies around potentially around where folks need to park after a big winter storm. But I don't think that means that we need to also simultaneously increase our salt usage. We have environmental policies that we have in place to try to minimize those. And so I think it's important that we take this in stages and see what success we have as we implement new infrastructure and new parking policies on our street, and then and then evaluate what our options are and our success.
Councilmember Song.
Immediately after this meeting, I think I'll be joining a number of Ann Arbor parents and watching the school board meeting. And I mention that because I think we've had a lot of questions around how does our budgeting, how does our work impact the schools and vice versa. And I know we've had discussions on, well, one, clarifying that we're two separate entities helps, but we are reliant on the other, right? Like our success is dependent on the essential success of our schools. And we have had these conversations on how we can be supportive of families here. I did ask if there's any way that we could give a tax benefit to new families moving to the area so that we could have more students in our public schools, and was reminded that we live in the state of Michigan. And in the state of Michigan, municipalities cannot give those kind of special favors or incentives. But, I think it's worth mentioning that, everyone here has tried to at least look to how our budget can be supportive of schools. I learned that Parks does not charge for when Ann Arbor Public Schools conducts their summer camps on our Parks property. It's just seeing things like, increasing fees so that we can keep Mac Pool open is also in supportive of our public schools. So every which way that we can find a way to support families in our geography, I'm really appreciative of how that's reflected in the budget, because we are very, very expensive, and there are fewer children with lack of childcare. So in improving tonight's budget, I really appreciate all the conversations from administration, from council members, and engaging our school board trustees and our state reps in reflecting on what we can do to just lighten in any way the burden that our schools face.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I too wanted to chime in with my gratitude towards staff, and in particular, the inclusion of the Economic Development Office and getting that launched right away. We, in April, declared that we have a housing crisis, we have a housing shortage, and we need to get moving as quickly as possible. And here we are moving, because the centerpiece of that work is housing. It's how do we allow for more housing to be built as quickly as possible where it makes sense in the city. And then on the heels of that, of course, are the amendments related to planning. Again, looking at how we can get necessary changes that support housing growth through the process as quickly as possible, which is exactly what we wanted to do when we passed those 4 resolutions in April. So appreciate the work of staff and my colleagues on those amendments, and looking forward to wrapping this up.
Further discussion. Councilmember Cornell.
I will also thank staff for great work on the budget. And I wanted to, Council Members Dish and Iyer and Briggs already touched on things. So I just want to say that I too am very enthusiastic to see these economic development initiatives move forward with some budget dollars behind them. And to Council Member Briggs' point, it feels weird because it's like 85 degrees out, but I'm all about snow today. So if you look at the questions that were asked of staff around some of these budget items, I too asked about salt and the salt usage. I obviously am very committed to our environment and understanding the runoff and just the impact of that. I think is really important as a community, again, to reflect our values. But I am interested to see how staff is able to take some of the new equipment that we allocated budget for around snow removal, the new ordinance that was passed, and maybe put an environmentally friendly lens on the products that we're using in the streets to determine if they're just necessary or if there's a way we could be better with that expense and environmental factor as well. So thank you, everyone.
Councilmember Harrison.
I just want to echo the sentiments of my peers in thanking the staff and Administrator Dehoney for all the work on the budget. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Further discussion? Councilmember Watson.
I wanted to draw a little attention to the fact that I'm looking at the slides from the 24 budget, and there was a projection for expenditures to exceed revenues by 3.1 million in 2026. And I think in FY 2026, and I think that's either decreased to the projection now for FY 2026 is either, I think, 0 or 100, somewhere between 0 or $125,000. So why is there, why has the outlook improved so much? And I mean, the answer is a little bit of the state shared revenue, and obviously the fact that, the good side, I guess, of inflation is that the taxes are allowed to the taxes are allowed to increase by that amount. So our revenues, when we had projected the revenues to grow by 6%, they've grown by 8%, and so that gives me some optimism for the ability to keep delivering. Keep these programs that are going and keep delivering services at the level we want. But I do echo the sentiments of Councilmember Briggs. So I acknowledge some care and caution going forward, but I wanted to point out that our projections have been adequately conservative in that we're headed toward a good fiscal situation in the FY 2026 range. The other thing I wanted to say is we talked a lot about the marijuana money not being permanent. And one of the reasons that isn't permanent is because there's been a lot of consolidation in the marijuana industry, and we get funding on a per license basis. It's something like $60,000 per license. So if stores consolidate or close, that's money we lose, and that's why we can't count on that money being stable just yet. It's not because we don't like the programs we're delivering. It's because there's a lot of change in that industry right now.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I just realized it might be nice to acknowledge some of the folks that are in the audience that have managed to stay here until 10 o'clock at night. So thank you. I know that also elements that are in the budget that weren't debated were, but appreciate Administrator Dehoney including them, were funding for the Phase 2 feasibility study. And I know that was something that A2 Public Power was strongly advocating for, and trying to raise awareness around the need for that work. And also, Mr. Kelly is here from the Delanus Center, and I'm glad to see that, which is in Ward 5. This was something that we included in the budget last year and advocated for it to be there. And this year, there's funding that has been placed there by the administrator, kind of slightly different programming, but around recovery services and really important funding in our community as we've seen needs go up. So thank you for sticking around this evening and for your advocacy and your work. And thank you to all.
Further discussion? So here at City Hall, we deliver clean water, we channel stormwater, and we clean wastewater. We keep people safe with outstanding and professional police and fire services. We build streets, sidewalks, and bike lanes, designing our streets for all users. We provide beautiful parks and open spaces. We support our downtown. We plan the built environment for now and the future. We inspect rental units and building sites and trade work to ensure safety. We collect solid waste as we recycle and compost. We provide human services support. We build affordable housing to fight economic and racial inequality, and we sprint towards community-wide carbon neutrality. This is the work of your municipal organization. The work of your municipal organization is accomplished through our budget. This is a balanced budget that accomplishes what our community demands to improve basic services and enhance quality of life. It does so with momentum and vision and practicality. It is the budget of your municipal organization that is devoted to making our community better, with a drive to deliver the basics that never loses sight of equity needs and our many and exciting opportunities in the future. For my part, I've had the pleasure of a number of budget meetings over the course of my time here in this chair and in council member chairs, and it's always a good and exciting moment when it is finally accomplished. It is done through hard work in the community, hard work here at the table, but that is hard work that pales in comparison to the hard and outstanding work accomplished by our amazing city staff, Mr. Mahoney, Ms. Prashan, and countless others upon whom you rely have put together a budget that does this council and this community proud, and I am grateful for it up and down the line. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? It is approved. Ms. Cord, do we have the great pleasure of a closed session today? Alas. We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report, moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator? City attorney? Goodness gracious. No, all right. We have no public comment overflow, and so in its absence, may I have a motion to adjourn, please, moved by Councilmember Cornell, second by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned.